it feels like very illegal to be recording a Rocky Horror podcast from literally in a closet. Welcome to What Haunts You, a podcast about the stories that haunt our dreams. Find us on Instagram at What Haunts You Pod, or find any of our episodes on YouTube or Spotify. This episode is one that I have been wanting to do for a long time, and I'm glad I have the right person for the job. We are finally going to talk about the Rocky Horror Picture Show with Caitlin, who you might remember from when we covered Phantom of the Opera. So welcome back.
Oh my God. Hi. Thank you for having me here again. The episode about the Phantom of the Opera is, the day we recorded that is maybe one of my favorite days of my entire life. So thank you so much for that. And I am over the moon to be back here talking about another one of my favorite musicals.
I had a great time doing that one too. That was such a fun conversation, and I just could nerd out about musicals forever and ever and ever. And the weirder the musical, the more I want to nerd out about it.
Yeah, same here. I'm happy to be your resident musical horror girly person.
Amazing, amazing. Because we need one of you. I need one of those. So last time you were on, we were kind of talking about how you're not super into horror. You try a couple of things, but you get more scared than is fun for you, which is obviously not what it's about. But it sounds like there have been some shifts. It seems like something is changing there, which I love to hear. So can you tell me a little bit about what's going on for you with horror right now?
Yeah, well, I think it's honestly through your podcast and being a guest, but then also every fall I make a fall/Halloween movie list, and I try my best to branch out and not have it be just last night I rewatched the DCOM Twitches. Why did I do that to myself? I don't know.
Because
Whatever.
it's so
It's
good. What
fun.
do you mean? Because it's fun.
It's really fun. I needed it. I really needed it.
Yeah.
So I try not to just do that kind of thing all the time. And I feel like lately, and in the last couple months, I have watched scarier things, and I'm really proud of myself. So I just wanted to toot my own horn a bit.
Yeah. Can you tell me what you've watched? What's gone over well for you so far?
Okay. And I'm sure anything I mention is not probably that scary to most people, but whatever. Last week, was it last week? I think time is not real. I watched Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola movie.
That makes a lot of sense. That seems like it would be right up your alley. It's very theatrical, just so the drama, it's very high drama.
I was not, I don't know what I expected going into it. I had no idea what it would look like or be like. And I did not expect how big of a production it was and how the visuals were some of the most stunning visuals I've ever seen in my life.
Oh yeah, the costumes in that, the set pieces in that, it's total eye candy, that one. It's so much fun. I should really rewatch that soon.
Yeah, that was great. I watched last night the 1946 Beauty and the Beast by Jean Cocteau.
Oh, I haven't seen that
Which is,
actually.
again, it's not actually scary, but what it made me think of actually is that it has a lot of parallels with the Phantom of the Opera, weirdly enough, right? And just having this quote unquote beast figure who you look at him and you're scared, and the young ingenue beautiful girl wants to run away but ultimately kind of loves him. There were so many parallels. I was like, wow, this is very timely that I'm watching this.
Yeah, I don't think I would have thought about it, but I do feel like Phantom of the Opera is a Beauty and the Beast story. I feel like it might not be as true about the book, but I feel like the musical definitely hits that mark of she's captive, but she kind of loves him. The ending is really where it diverges, right? Of them ending up together versus them ending up splitting up. But the foundation is definitely very similar.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I am scrolling through my letterbox and I'm realizing that maybe that's about it. I don't know why I thought I watched some scarier things recently. Maybe because I was watching Buffy season 3, which I don't actually find scary, but it's like still, I don't know. I've been watching one season for the last few fall seasons, if that makes sense. So I started in 2023, and I'd never watched it before. So I was kind of just like in that mindset for like a few weeks of watching season 3.
That's cool. So I'll make my like very illegal confession here. I've actually never seen even a single episode of Buffy, which feels like insane to say out loud, but I really need to get around to it. Am I mean, I think I've mentioned this to you. I have so much more trouble starting a new TV show than starting a new movie. It just feels like such a bigger commitment. But it's also so obviously up my alley. Like it's so clear that I would like it that I don't know what's stopping me at this point, but I just like haven't turned it on yet.
I completely understand because that was me up until 2 years ago. Like I had never watched any of it. I'd seen some clips like here and there and heard things about the plot over the years. But yeah, I definitely think you would love it and enjoy it. And maybe you could do like what I'm doing, which is just this weird tradition I decided randomly of like one season per fall because it's so fall coded to me that I'm like, I don't know that I could do this in other parts of the year, but also the more I watch, the more I love it. So then it's like, do I actually want to wait till next year?
Yeah, that becomes the real question. Once you get into like binge watching mode, you're not going to want to turn it off. But that is a good idea though. That does feel like a like slightly more digestible way to get into, especially like a show that was long, right? Like I think now I feel like I always can start like a mini series a little more easily because I'm like, oh, that's like a week of my time if I really am into it. But those multi-season shows are definitely like a bigger thing to take a bite out of. So I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I recommend it.
Awesome. But I feel like that's a good start. And I feel like old I mean, I like I've mentioned, like I love older horror movies, like early film days, old horror movies. So I think I have to watch Beauty and the Beast. Like I haven't seen that one.
That's another one that the visuals, some of the visuals are really, I'm trying to find the right word, really stunning, but really I don't know, I can't explain. I'm just like seeing shots in my head as I'm trying to find what word to use. But a lot of it is pretty like standard, like when it's her family and her sister. She has like, I don't know what version of this story they're necessarily telling, but she has two sisters and a brother and a dad, obviously. And so when it's centered around them, it's just very standard filmmaking, I would say. But then anything with actually like with Belle and the Beast is super ethereal, like lots of shots that flow into each other. There's like magic involved, and just like knowing that all of that was like a bit practical and like no CGI and stuff. It's like, oh, it's so endearing.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see how creative people were able to be with such limited resources and such limited technology because they still managed to make these incredibly effective sequences that honestly hold up better than early CGI movies do, for me at least.
Yeah, and it just everything feels so much more artistic in that way.
Totally. So should we get into Rocky Horror? Is it time?
Yes, I'm like sitting here like all excited.
Yes. Okay, so I think it makes sense for us to kind of start with how we got into Rocky Horror, each of us, and like what that journey into that world looked like. So do you want to tell me about when you first saw it and kind of how you started dipping your toes into that?
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is that I don't remember a time in my life that I didn't know about Rocky Horror, and yet I have zero memory of watching it for the first time. So I honestly don't know when it would have been. I can't imagine I watched it as like a toddler because that would have been crazy. But I feel like my whole life I've just known. Certainly, I knew what the time warp was, and I knew some of the other songs. I grew up in a musical theater loving household, and in some ways I'm surprised that my family likes this musical, but in other ways it's just like by the time I was alive and listening to musicals, this was just so in a funny way it became kind of mainstream. Also, my sister, who's a singer, she actually did like a stage production of this in Montreal, like ages ago. Um, I feel like I have a memory of seeing the theater and seeing her in it, but like I was really young, so I don't think I went to see it. But Erin, if you're listening to this, please like message me. I forgot to ask her beforehand if she remembers if I saw her in this or not. It seemed like a really fun thing that she did. And then for many years, I've wanted to see either another like a live stage production of it, or I wanted to go watch the movie in a theater with people. And I knew that that was a big thing in Montreal, and I know a lot of cities do that. Finally, last year, me and my friend Ted went to see a stage production of it. When I say stage, where we went didn't actually have a stage. It was literally like a black box theater, like just the floor was the stage, and there was maybe like seating for like 75, 100 people max. So it was very, very, very intimate. Um, and it was really, really cool for me because, yes, the like most of the story and um, like big beats stayed the same, but a lot of the dialogue was changed and it was much looser. Like it was there were a lot of colloquialisms or like regionally specific references, like things about Canada or things about Quebec or things about Montreal. Like it was really fun that they did that. And that I wasn't expecting. What I was expecting, which happened, was that after certain lines from directly from the movie or the original production were said, like people in the audience would shout certain things. And I think most of the time it was things that I don't know how this started happening. You maybe could tell me with like the history, but I'm sure some of the things people shouted in the audience were like what anyone would shout in like other cities, like what everyone shouts after certain lines. But I think a lot of it was just like people like interjecting at will. There was some like awkward moments with audience members, but it was just fun and it was so fucking campy and queer. Like I can't even explain. Like the people who actually were the actors in the production, like it was a mix of all genders playing any characters. Like it was so fucking fun. It was one of my favorite like live theatrical experiences of my life. I'd like to go back this year. I don't know if I'll have a chance, but that in a nutshell is my in a nutshell. Like I go on for so long, but that's my history so far with this musical.
Yes, and I love that you include the so far, right? Because this is a lifelong journey, I think, with Rocky Horror. Yeah, I came in through the movie first, but I've seen the live show as well now. And my mom used to go like regularly to Rocky Horror when she was, I don't know if she was like a teenager or a young adult, but like in her later adolescence, like she was a regular at Rocky Horror, which kind of surprises me about her. I feel like it's something I would like maybe want to talk to her more about like what the appeal was for her and like why she liked it and why she kept going back because it just is a little surprising. My mom showed it to me. I think I was probably like 13 or 14 the first time I saw the movie at home. And then I think I was like 15 when I went to my first shadow cast and I went with one of my friends and we like dressed up as best we could at that age, right? We had like black leggings on and like big black t-shirts and we cut the t-shirts up, not in like a sexy way, but just to like show the like we had red tank tops on under because we were like, at least we'll do black and red and like that'll be something. And we put on red lipstick and we went and it was just so fun. I didn't get like did they do a virgin initiation for you at the play?
No, no.
Oh my
I would have been, oh
god.
my God, like that would have stressed me out so much.
Well, get ready because when you see the shadow cast, you're gonna have to do it. But and I will say, like, I think I did not get one for the movie because a lot of the time they skip you if you are under 18, which is the right decision. I understand. I think that is a good thing, but I still feel sad about it. So I didn't get like an initiation moment. And I probably saw like one or two more shadow casts throughout my time in high school. And then I saw like a few more times when I was in undergrad. And then my like real Rocky Horror phase happened when I was in grad school. I had moved to Orange County very much temporarily. I was just there for school, and then I was planning to move to San Diego, and I just did not like living in Orange County, and the only thing that I liked there was this little nonprofit movie theater called the Frida Cinema. It's still there. I mean, it's still there. I still go once in a while. And their home shadow cast is called Chaos Rocky Horror. So, like, big shout out to them. I'm very obsessed with them. And I started going like religiously once a month. Second Friday of the month, every month. I think that's still when they do it. Like, I was in the front of the line. And like sometimes I was with friends and sometimes I was by myself. But even if you see Rocky Horror by yourself, you're not really by yourself. Like, you're just gonna, like, standing in the line is half the fun of the show. I feel like you're just like seeing who's there and like how many times has this person gone, and this older person who used to be in a shadow cast and this new person who's like been hearing about it for their whole life but they've never seen it yet. And it's just so like the vibes are so high as soon as you're in line. So it's so fun. And I have seen it in a few other places, but like Chaos at the Frida has my heart big time. And I've seen the play twice. I saw the play once at OB Playhouse here in San Diego. That has since closed. Rest in peace to the OB Playhouse. I You would have thought this place was so cool. It was small, kind of like the theater you were at, but it did have a small stage. And their focus was basically like creating an accessible theater space financially. So like the tickets were never more than like $35 for everyone, and they relied mostly on donations, but then they weren't getting enough donations after a while, and so they ended up closing. And then I saw, and that was kind of like yours, where it was like very intimate, very small. And then I saw it at the Signet Theater in Old Town in San Diego, and that was a little bit of a bigger show. Neither of the live performances I saw had many callbacks. I was nervous to do it because no one was really doing it, and I was wondering if I did some, if it would start, but I was also, like, worried I would be the only person doing it, so I couldn't get myself to do it, which is funny because when I go to the movie, I'm, like, so loud and so obnoxious and, like, just truly God help anyone who's sitting next to me because 'cause I'm a menace. But when I saw it at the OB Playhouse, that was the first time I had seen the live show, and they told me that I was still a virgin for the live show and that it didn't count that I had been to the shadow cast. And so they gave me like the V on my face, and then and then my nana who came to the show with me had seen it before, to be clear, like she knew what she was in for, and I just took her to a drag brunch for her birthday like last weekend, so she's fine. But my nana had to watch me get like flogged on the butt as my virgin ritual at the play.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's really funny.
It's hilarious, and she's a good sport, and like she knows Rocky Horror, so I don't even know how surprised she was, but it was just really funny. Like, it was a very absurd moment for me.
That is such a rich history. I love that. I definitely want to see the movie as part of an event one day as well. That was originally what I wanted to do, but then however it worked out last year, I ended up seeing an actual live production of it, which I'm grateful for. But yeah, I'd like to see like the movie, shadow cast, like all of that would be fun.
Yeah, I think both experiences are like so worth it. Like I would tell anyone who's only done one or the other to like do the opposite when they get a chance because it is fun. Kind of like what you were saying about the callbacks and there being a lot of like regional things. That is pretty accurate. There are some things that are borderline universal, and then there are some things that get established at specific theaters and like in specific cities and communities. So that's where you get like jokes about your home city being thrown into the mix, or references to places like I would imagine, like, for you in Canada, that there's like references to places that would make no sense for someone to reference here and vice versa.
Yeah, there was like at some point one of the actors said something about referencing how Alberta was super conservative. Like that's not going to work in like the UK or wherever else.
Yeah, like it's all very constructed to feel personal and feel like it's tailored for you. And I think that's like one of the things that makes it so special. And I think that's one of the things that makes it fun to, like, if you're traveling and have the opportunity to see different performances of it in different places, to see what works its way into like this the audience script of different cities and different areas.
And I do just want to say now that there will be a new production of Rocky Horror on Broadway in spring of 2026. I don't think they've announced a cast yet, but I will be so excited to see who's in it. And it's going to be directed by Sam Pinkleton, who is directing Oh Mary on Broadway. I would love to see this revival if going to the States makes any kind of sense in the next year, but just need to throw that out there. And I think it's funny too, because the last time I was on the podcast, we talked about Phantom, and that is now, I mean, it's not actually running on Broadway. It's called Masquerade, and it's an immersive experience thing. But it's just funny that now we're talking about another musical that is coming back to Broadway very soon.
Yeah, that is funny, and I am so excited for it to get a revival. I think it really deserves one. I feel uh, I mean, they had the, like, movie remake of it. I haven't seen it. I shouldn't, like, speak ill of something I haven't seen, but everything I've heard about it makes me continue to not see it, you know what I mean? So I really I think Rocky Horror always gets introduced to the next generation one way or another, but I'm really excited for there to be, like, a high quality show for people who can to see it and just to, like, and hopefully get some good slime tutorials out of that too, and, ugh, if it were up to me, it would be, you know, like, high quality recorded, and we could watch it like we all watched Hamilton, like, I would eat that up.
I have high hopes. I have high hopes. I mean, it's so popular that I hope that it can be lucrative enough that making a pro shot makes sense. That would be incredible.
Yeah, and I think it would make sense to do. But yeah, so we both did, like, a little digging into the history, and I think in a way that probably could have been predicted. You got a lot of the history about the musical, and I kind of followed it up with a lot of the history about the movie. So do you wanna kind of set the stage for us and kind of tell me a little bit about how the musical got developed?
Yeah, totally. So it was originally a stage musical and it was called The Rocky Horror Show. And then it's just really cute that for the movie they called it The Rocky Horror Picture Show because it's a moving picture. It's a movie. Anyways, um, so everything was written by Richard O'Brien, music lyrics book, completely his creation, which is really cool. And basically, he thought of it as a humorous tribute to a variety of B movies associated with the science fiction and horror genres from the 30s all the way to the early 60s. Um, there's things like he wanted to include, this is, I'm going to quote from Wikipedia, sorry, portentous dialogue of schlock horror. I didn't think anyone would think that I came up with those words. So, Steve Reeves muscle films and 50s rock and roll. That's kind of like the big inspiration for the original musical. And he also set it against the backdrop of the glam era. And so that was more about British pop culture from the early 70s, which I think is like, oh, very much on full display with Frankenfurter in the movie. But so the musical opened in London in 1973. I was shocked to find out that it ran until 1980. I was always curious to look into the reception of this musical and this film because up until my viewing this year, the last few years when I watched the movie, the main thing I think to myself is how the fuck did this get made? Like, and how did it become pop? Like, how did it not remain in obscurity until it became a cult classic? Like, how did it even get put onto cinema screens? Like, and I mean this
And
like,
now it's on Disney Plus, like, which is,
oh
like, that
yeah,
like, cinema screens is one thing, but now it's literally on Disney Plus, which is
that shocked me a
hilarious.
few years ago when I was like, where can I watch this? Oh, okay, the one with like animated kids movies. Okay, sure. But yeah, so the original London West End run was for 7 years, which I think is kind of amazing. But then the Broadway run only lasted for 45 shows. And that's kind of funny to me because like everyone like thinks about, I feel like with stereotypes you imagine that like British people are more uptight than Americans, but in so many ways, especially when you think about musicals, I feel like American audiences like are way more uptight. So I don't know if it was just because of that, but
I also
Yeah,
think America, like, consistently has so many hangups around sex, specifically. Like,
right.
we're not uptight about some things, but I think that's something that we have historically been incredibly uptight about.
Yeah, and I'm sure also because it does feel like a pretty it sorry. I do find that it has a very distinct British voice to it, but in a lot of ways, the movie in particular feels very American. But I think I would assume that the original stage production in London probably really, really resonated with British audiences in the culture of it all. And so I'm maybe then if when it transferred to Broadway, that context maybe just didn't transfer at the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's hard to imagine a time where people would have been seeing this and not really knowing what it is. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the thing. Like, everyone in our generation who saw it probably had, like, at least some level of knowledge of what they were going into. You can never really do it justice, but I also feel like everyone is always telling you that, like, that it's indescribable, that it almost makes no sense, but also makes perfect sense. Like, it's in the zeitgeist enough now that you're not, like, going in so fresh, and back then, you have to imagine, like, people would not have known what the hell they were walking into. Like, can you imagine? You're like, "Oh, I have tickets to, like, go see a show on Broadway," and the show is Rocky Horror. Like, actually, can you
I would
imagine
have
that?
killed, like, I would kill someone right now for the chance to go back in time and see that original production. Like, I'm not being, like, I'm not joking. Like, that would be amazing. And I'm just surprised that there wasn't, like, I don't know, like a riot or something. It makes me think of this is so niche, I apologize, but I am a musician. It makes me think of the premiere of The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky. It was a ballet that he wrote in 1913. It premiered in Paris. And the style of dance that the ballet dancers were doing was very, I don't even know how to describe it. It was not beautiful. It was meant to be folksy and a little bit deranged and just really out there. And there was a literal riot. Like the audience actually rioted. Like we get taught this in music school. It's like a very famous anecdote. So in my head, I feel like that should have happened with Rocky Horror, but like I don't know if that did. I just feel like that could have been such a beautiful little thing to happen. Not if anyone got hurt, but like I can imagine that a similar thing. Yeah, if you're like a New Yorker going to Broadway in whatever in the 70s and you're like, what the fuck is this?
Or even the movie, like, even when the movie came out, but yeah, I mean, it's hard to even put yourself into that frame of mind where this is an entirely new thing that exists. It's so ubiquitous now. Like, it was on Glee.
Oh my god, I forgot about that. I'm gonna try and forget about that again.
I've actually never seen Glee, I just, like, factually know that it was on Glee, so I don't have the trauma of listening to it listening to it that
Save
way.
yourself.
Yeah, it's kind of how I feel about the remake of the movie, like, I've literally never heard anything redeeming about it, so I'm just not. I am such a completionist in so many things, but I think this one, I will leave alone until a worthy newcomer arrives.
I concur.
Yeah, so after the movie is obviously based on the play, like you said, they changed the name from the Rocky Horror Show to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and it ends up being the longest theatrical run for any movie ever, because it is literally still running, it's not over. And this is also where we get the development of the shadow cast, and other movies since then have tried to implement, like, a shadow cast thing, but this is really where it started, and so it started at the Waverly Theater, and the manager of the theater, Denise Borden, would play the soundtrack before the movie to, like, get the vibes up, get people excited. Before we recorded this, I read a book that was a collection of essays about Rocky Horror, and it was called Absolute Pleasure: Queer Perspectives on Rocky Horror. And in the intro, it talks a lot about, like, the development of this and just, like, how it became such a fixture that it has been and, like, has remained. And if you don't know, like, this is the 50th anniversary of the movie coming out, and so this is something that is still resonating with so many people like 50 years later. Like it is a staple of queer community, it's a staple of rock and roll, it's a staple of just like the freaks and weirdos, and so they talk a lot about that. And so, yeah, she would play the soundtrack to get everyone hyped. And Sal Piro or Pyro, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. He is the co founder and president of the Rocky Horror Picture Show fan club. And he tells us the audiences naturally began to respond by booing the villains and cheering the heroes. This spawned a whole group of regulars who weekly reserved the same seats in the first row of the balcony. These regulars started dressing up as Rocky Horror characters and began the now iconic tradition of callbacks, funny and irreverent audience responses to key lines and moments in the film. A few of the regulars began to lip sync to the record that is played before the movie in front of the whole audience. This was spontaneous and it developed into a mini floor show that would happen before the movie, and audience response was tremendous. So, this just started with people who just kept coming back and learning the show and learning the routines of the show and having their same reactions repeatedly and then starting to share those reactions with other people. And so this all became like more and more elaborate as time went by, and eventually props started being added, and eventually it like spread to other theaters, and each theater would have some of the same things and some knew they would create their own things, and it has just spread nationwide, world I mean, I think to some extent worldwide, and turned into, yeah, the phenomenon that it is today.
I love that so much, and I couldn't think of a more perfect movie for that development. Not that the movie is perfect, but I just mean like if any movie were to elicit this kind of culture around it, of course it's going to be Rocky Horror.
Totally. And the other thing about Rocky Horror when you go to see a movie is unless there's something special about it, like there's a touring, showing this year for the 50th anniversary that some of the stars are going to, or if you have Q&As and stuff, unless there's some sort of special circumstances, you see Rocky Horror at midnight. And it matters that you see it at midnight. Your journey into Rocky Horror starts at midnight, but in the movie, Brad and Janet's descent into the castle, into Frankenfurter's castle, also begins at midnight. So you're kind of like entering the layer of depravity right alongside them. And in Absolute Pleasure, Heather O. Petrocelli in their essay writes, midnight opens up a world of possibility where one can cast aside self or socially imposed limitations. Midnight invites queers to transcend the bounds of societal norms and connect with who we are. It ushers in queerness through the phantoms, desires, and longings that are usually hidden, yet flourish in the shadows. Midnight is when queer worlds of possibility exists. Midnight, then, is a liminal and transitional borderland between the past and the future, the self and the other. The essence of midnight brims with queer potential.
Why is that bringing a tear to my eye? That is so beautiful. Oh my god. I mean, I wish I could stay awake long enough to make it to midnight on any given day. That doesn't happen often. But wow, that is super, super beautiful.
Yeah, and I think it makes so much sense, right? You go to this space you can where you can dress however you want, and maybe it's on theme and maybe it's just a wacky outfit that you have nowhere else to wear, and it's like a relinquishing of all of the norms and standards that exist by daylight and saying like all bets are off, right? Like we all stayed up till midnight. We're going to be here till 3 a.m. All bets are off and we're doing this. We're doing this whatever it's going to look like.
I love that. That's my brain just stopped. That's how enamored I am with that quote.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should add the book to your list because it was really, I mean, the essays are beautiful. I have several quotes from several of the essays, but I obviously like, if it were, I could have included the entire book and it would have all been relevant, but obviously wasn't going to do that.
Yes, I've added it to my reading list on Storycraft, so thank you for that.
Perfect. I guess like let's get into the actual movie. So we open with we're kind of going to go song by song, and then there are some scenes in between that we'll talk a little bit about too. but we open with science fiction double feature. And do you wanna just, like, describe what it's like to see the start of this movie?
It's so fucking iconic, and I apologize in advance. I've probably already used the word iconic 5 times, and I will be using it like 100 more because I think it's just the perfect word for this movie, but it is one of my favorite, certainly one of my favorite opening sequences of any movie. I think it's one of the most it's one of the coolest shots of any movie, but what it is a black backdrop and you see these red disembodied lips singing this song, Science Fiction Double Feature. And it's sung by Riff Raff, who is played by who Richard O'Brien plays, but the lips, the actual moving lips, are magentas, and it's like, and it's so close up. You see like her teeth and everything. She's enunciating to high heaven. Like, what I do find funny though is that up until a couple years ago, when I started watching it with subtitles, like I didn't know what half of these things were, but it's just because I didn't know what the references were and who's the what the names were and everything, so I couldn't match what I was seeing to the sounds. And then when I watched it with subtitles, I was like, whoa, okay, I see what's happening.
Yeah, because this song is just reference after reference after reference to old sci-fi. And for most of the time I've been a fan of Rocky Horror, I hadn't seen like any of the movies, but I have since then gotten much more into I think much more into sci-fi and then also more into older movies. So now I'm like working my way through them and it just makes so much sense because the whole movie is paying homage to these movies, and so to just start with, like, a list that manages to, like, honor these movies while degrading them at the same time, especially, and when you see this with the shadow cast, like, this has a callback after basically every line, but the first thing you really hear when you start a shadow cast showing of this is one person, maybe several people saying, "Let there be lips," and then the song opens up, and it's so perfect. In the book Absolute Pleasure, in Jane Claire Bradley's essay, they quote Michael Blythe saying, "You know if you're going to love that film within a minute. If you respond to that opening sequence, you're gonna have the fucking time of your life." And then Jane goes on to say, "For those destined to become transfixed, infatuated, and obsessed, those first few seconds of science fiction double feature are usually enough to do it." And period. Like there's nothing even to add on to that. It's so captivating immediately and it's so enticing. And I do feel like it's true. Like, if you are pulled in that like that's it for you and you're going to be in this thing. And if you're looking around and you see someone who's like what's going on, they're not going to like it from there if that does not grab them.
And I do also want to say that I think the music, both in this song and in the whole musical, is extremely lush and well thought out. And like, I feel like this musical could work with lesser music because it's still like such a romp and such a fun time. It doesn't have to be super complex. But the fact that the music, the actual instrumental music and the lyrics and melodies and everything are still so good, I think that's amazing. Like this song is like has a string section, like it's just very robust and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And I say this with so much love in my heart, but Rocky Horror is a bad movie, right? It's one of my favorite movies, but like it's kind of a bad movie. And the juxtaposition of this like kind of bad movie with this amazing soundtrack is so interesting to me. Like, it has so many elements of a so bad it's good movie, but it has these bangers of songs and like songs that feel more and more profound the more times you hear them and the more you actually get to hearing the lyrics. Cause the first time you're just bombarded with everything, right? You have no idea what anyone is saying or talking about or doing. But with, repeated exposure to it, it's like you start to actually piece together what the hell they're talking about. And like that's where the meat of everything is. And it's wild. It's such a wild amalgamation of things.
Yeah, I'm curious because I've seen this stated a lot that it's like a bad movie. Is it because it's so like over the top? Because I will say that I don't view it as such. Like I totally understand like watching like I don't know, Twitches for example. Like that to me is not a good movie. But like I can't get over, sorry, I know this is an aside, but I cannot get over how like cheap the clothing looks in that movie. Like it's Disney. You have money. I don't get it. Anyways, to me that's like yeah, it's not a good movie, but it's fun. It could be campy, whatever. I actually think Rocky Horror is good. I think it's weird and it's over the top, but I think it's on purpose. But maybe I'm missing something because sometimes the way my brain works, I don't I don't get what other people get. But I'm curious if you don't mind like explaining what that means to you.
Totally, and I think that this is also something that, like, exists within horror specifically, and I wanna be really clear that I don't when I say bad movie, 'cause you're probably not the only person who's wondering this. When I say bad movie, I don't mean that it's not a good movie. I mean that it has the qualities of, like, a capital B bad, capital M movie, TM, as that exists in, like, the horror lexicon, and some of that is like some of the sound is off at certain point there are like these things about it and they almost contribute to the like uncanny nature of the film, so they kind of like work, but like some of the sound is off, some of the mixing is like not like particularly like for Columbia's parts, the mixing of her voice is like pretty bad. The laser beams at the end are like so bad. I mean, I love like and I it's like one of my favorite parts, like I love them, but that's like the stuff I'm talking about when I say a bad movie. It's like a bad movie
Like more in the technical aspects.
in the technical aspects, and then I think the cheesy aspects. But it's not a bad movie in that it's like a movie that isn't good and like people shouldn't like don't wanna watch. It's like so bad it's good, but then it's also good on top of that. I don't even really know how to it's such a like ephemeral concept in my brain that it's like hard to even fully explain, but it's like a term that I would only use really about like horror and sci-fi movies.
I love that. Thank you for explaining that because I that actually makes a lot of sense. And I can see that clearer now. And yeah, I probably just don't have that context of having watched as many horror movies as most people, but certainly not as much as you. So no, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and like I say, I mean it as such a term of endearment. Like it's not meant as derogatory. It's not meant as like to take anything away. It's part of the beauty. I actually don't think that fixing the like quote unquote bad elements would make it better. Like I actually think it would probably make it much less enjoyable, much less impactful. Like there's something about the way that the bad and good come together in this movie that makes it, dare I say, flawless. I know that like that would be a really hot take, and I know that there are like I know there are like gender and sexuality flaws to the movie. I think there are questionable reads about those. I think there are also reads on those that are more generous that I tend to align with more. There are consent issues in this movie. Like I understand that this movie is not flawless, but it's so much bigger than the sum of its parts that it does really feel that way to me.
I completely agree. And I mean, one of my favorite movies, Pride and Prejudice, 2005, 2004, 2005. Damn it, I forget. One of those years. There are some parts of that movie, like certain shots or the way the camera moves, that like I really don't think like works well. But that's as a whole, I still love the movie. And if it were different, I'd be sad. Like if someone like fixed those things, I'd be like, oh no, that's no, that's I don't care. Like I can point out certain things that makes a movie less than perfect, but then as a whole, the movie could be perfect to me. And that's to yeah, I agree. And that I think that's what Rocky Horror is. It's like I can point out this and that and this and the other, and then be like, but like 5 stars.
Right, like many criticisms, but please do not change it. Like don't change a thing. But yeah, so after our intro, we get into like the first kind of song proper. And so we have like the Damn It Janet sequence. And so this is where we see our main characters, Brad and Janet, they're coming out of a wedding, and you can actually here I'll let you talk about what the wedding scene is like.
It's really fun. So I don't know when the first time I would have noticed this would have been, but and the first time anyone watches this movie, you won't notice this. But basically, you have Brad and Janet. There's like a whole sequence happening, but in the background, you can actually see the characters of Riff Raff, Magenta, and Frankenfurter, and they are dressed as the American Gothic characters, basically, like from that famous painting. And I think the painting is somewhere either in this scene or in the movie. I'm pretty sure there's lots of famous paintings in this movie. Um, and so they serve as the chorus for the song Damn It Janet. And they just repeat after Janet and Brad and at certain points. Like Brad will say something and then they'll just be like, Janet, in like a super deadpan voice. I just really love it. It's a super like the song itself, I think, is basically like a satire of a traditional American couple, especially like it almost looks like they could be from the 50s, but I'm pretty sure the movie sets them in contemporary like 1970s. But I actually had to look that up because I was like, this feels very 50s for a minute. They're just super like, you know, innocent. It's not maybe the exact word, but probably prudish, super like mainstream clothes. They're polite, they're like super quote unquote normal, right? Like the all American stereotype.
So one of the callbacks is like very often someone will be like, I see you back there, or like some variation on that to like identify that if you're in the know that you can see the three of them in the background. And so that's kind of fun. But if you don't know what they're pointing to, like they don't always say the name. So you might be like, what? Like, I don't know what they're referring to. I guess I'll find out. But Brad and Janet are totally presented to us at the beginning of this movie as like a caricature of the heterosexual American couple, 100%. One of my favorite essays in Absolute Pleasure was by Magdalene Visaggio. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that name right. And this one is called To Find the Truth, I've Even Lied. And it talks about like the lies contained within the movie and like the lies that get broken down. I'm going to I'm going to talk about this more at the end cuz like we like break through all of this stuff, but they talk about how this caricature of the two of them is in itself a lie. And so they write at the wedding in the film's opening scene, Janet catches the bouquet and then Brad proposes. It's easy, it's simple, it's quaint. And it's the movie's first lie because Brad and Janet are, neither of them, the uncomplicated caricatures they first appear to be as they perform the essential act of heteronormativity. It's an act not meaningfully different than what the actors themselves were doing on set, reciting their lines and hitting their marks. These two kids met in college. They're leaving their friend's wedding, who also met at the same college. They're all friends. They catch the bouquet. They are supposed to get married. That's what's supposed to come next for them. And so that's what they're doing. And they're dancing through like a cemetery as this is happening. And there's like a funeral happening at the cemetery. And so there's this like dark thing of the two of them like lost in this little world that neither of them seems that invested in, but they're really like they're in a cemetery while this is happening, which feels like that should be ominous and foreshadowing something. But it's almost like it's easy to not even think about it or notice it, which is kind of funny.
To be fully honest, I don't think I ever have noticed that. I think when I was doing some more research on the background or like the plot just to make sure that I understood what I needed to understand, I think it mentioned that. And I was like, wait, actually, like, I just don't think I ever processed that. Um, and it's just, that's just really funny. I love dichotomies like that in specific shots or just overall in film when there's like such things that are at such odds with each other.
The cemetery thing also is one of my favorite callbacks. I'm just gonna like I didn't write them in my notes because I was like I would just be writing every single one, but I'm gonna just mention my favorite ones as we like touch on them. And in this scene, one of my favorite ones is like one person in the theater, or like a few people will say, who put this billboard in my cemetery? And then like someone else will say, who put this cemetery in front of my billboard? And like that's always one of my favorite callbacks. And it's like it's just so funny because the billboard is as funny as the proposal. Like it's the it's like the thing about like Denton being like the place to find happiness or whatever, and it's like in front of a cemetery. The whole thing. It it tricks you into not realizing how absurd it is, but once you've seen the whole thing and you've taken the whole thing in and you know that it's an hour and a half of pure absurdity, this opening sequence just becomes so ridiculous.
Oh, for sure. And as much as all these, it's supposed to represent such an all American, like pure, obviously white situation of getting married, you do have something really interesting, which is that Brad and Janet's friends who just got married, they have their wedding car pull up to the church. And I'm assuming the groom spray painted on it or someone painted on it. Normally you just paint just married, or you'd have a just married sign on the car, but you see the text and it says wait till tonight, spelled Tonite. That's important. She got hers, now he'll get his. And I think that's so like funny to me in the sense that that's clearly so gross and implying that marriage is to just please women. Like all girls want, all girls dream of getting married when they're older. So now, okay, fine, he gave in, they're getting married, but now of course they're going to go and have sex, and that's his reward, or that's for him. And I always find that funny because I'm like, yeah, see, like traditional American values, quote unquote, are actually just so fucking gross across the board. Like whether it's meant to be super pure or super sexual, like in both ways, it's still very patriarchal.
Absolutely. They are like the good Christians, right? And we do find out later in the movie that Brad and Janet are not having sex. They're waiting until marriage. So we can only assume that Ralph and Betty of this wedding are probably doing the same thing. Another thing about this song, sorry, this is kind of a tangent, but another thing that I think is so funny about this song is that after Brad gives Janet the ring, the first thing she says is, "It's nicer than Betty Monroe had." The ring is already a prop to her. It's not really a symbol of anything. It's just a symbol of like her acceptance into this world that she is living in.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's totally not it's not very romantic. I mean, the whole song is kind of like them being super happy with each other, and it's like cute on face value. But yeah, it's very like this is what we're like you said, like this is what we're supposed to do as a hetero couple. And but because I'm a woman, I'm supposed to like fawn over this ring, and it's supposed to be like the best day of my life. And like, but yeah, it is kind of transactional. And just what I love about this movie is this setup. Like we didn't have to necessarily have the scene. It could have just, I mean, I don't know how else this movie could have started necessarily, but it could have started a myriad of ways that could have worked. But I think it's really important to have this premise of like this young, sweet couple. They're so innocent, like, and getting married. They're so excited. And then they go into this castle that's full of crazy stuff happening. I don't know. I think it's just like a really smart setup.
Totally, because like the quote says, right? Like they're reciting their lines and hitting their marks. Like she squeals over the ring, he gets down on the ground, he drops the ring.
I've always wondered if that was on purpose or not. I don't know. Like if that was just like what happened when they were filming and they kept it in.
Yeah, I've never looked it up. I actually wonder that too. And like he's talking about like there's three ways that love can grow. That's good, bad, or mediocre. Like it's really not. It tricks you again, tricks you into thinking that it's romantic, but it's really not. Even when she's talking, she's like, now we're engaged and I'm so glad that you met mom and no dad. I'm so glad that we've done all these formalities so that we can just keep doing these formalities.
Very, very formal. Yes.
So after this, they set off to drive to visit their old science teacher who kind of like set them up. He convinced Brad to ask Janet out when he was too shy, maybe too gay. We'll unpack that
Oh.
later, I guess. Um, but he basically convinces them to get together, and so they're gonna go visit him.
Yeah, and they're driving through the rain. They pass by these motorcyclists going in the opposite direction, and Janet like remarks like this that's the third I forget what she says, like the third time they've seen motorcyclists that night. And Brad goes, "Yes, Janet, life's pretty cheap to that type."
And then the audience goes, cheap, 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 cheap.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't, I didn't know that. Because I think some of the callbacks when I went to the stage production, I'm sure are like the same as when you see the movie, but I don't know if they did that one. Yeah, it's just that it's, again, setting us up to be like, oh, look at this wonderful couple who's like so nice and sweet, and again, all American. Like repeating myself, but and then contrasting it to just people on motorcycles, like as if there's one type of person that might ride a motorcycle. But of course, you're meant to just assume that like it's people that live outside of the mainstream, outside of mainstream American values. And then they get a flat tire essentially, or something happens with the tire, and they're still in the car, and the rain is still pouring, and they decide to go to this castle they saw a few miles back. And what I love about this scene is that you're actually seeing Brad and Janet through the windshield, and the windshield wipers are going for a while, but then Brad turns them off eventually, and they're still talking, but the rain like blurs their faces. And it's one of my favorite shots of the whole movie and of like cinema in general, because I feel like it's one of like the only times that when there's a car scene, you see the actors through the windshield for that long. Like normally directors would shoot inside the car because, and also usually it's not even like much of a real car, I think, on movie sets. But this was like pretty practical looking. And it's just like a beautiful moment of like blurring Brad and Janet. To me, what it symbolizes is like they're about to become different people, or they're about to evolve in some way. They're about to like who they are right now is blurring, and they're going to transition into other people.
Yeah, totally. It feels intentional. It feels like we're looking at them through this like veiled lens because they have not quite like stepped into themselves yet. We're not seeing who they really are. We're seeing what they're pretending to be. Another thing that's interesting about the scene in the car is that what they're listening to on the radio is actually is Richard Nixon's resignation speech, which is so which I mean I think like serves a couple of functions, right? It sets us up in time so we know that we're like in basically today as far as the time the movie came out goes.
I was so, I wanted you to bring this up because I was like, yeah, what do you make of this?
I mean, I guess it's like so it's I mean, it could be so many things. And I think it's part of why the movie feels so distinctly American, like you said, like as opposed to the stage show. But I think there's an element of like crumbling America that just like revolves around Nixon as a president. We don't have a whole lot of resignations of presidents. Like that seems kind of that there's something there about this being a time where we're like watching everything kind of fall apart, and they're still living in that space of traditional American couple, and like they're about to kind of descend out of that at this moment where I think people feel like they've been watching like the decline of the American family. I talked about that kind of in my 70s episode, just about this like fear that was around everything, and like distrust of the government and distrust of systems and all these things. So I don't know exactly what to make of it, but there's definite like there's something there to pick at.
That makes perfect sense to me. And they're not really reacting to it. I think maybe Janet is she reading a newspaper, or maybe she's reading a map, I'm not sure.
Newspaper, yeah.
Oh yeah, because then she uses it to cover her head. They're not reacting to the radio, and there is like tiny moments of silence in the scene as they're driving, to which they could have inserted some kind of line about it, but they just kind of let it linger in the air. I think it's a good move on the movie's part of just like letting it be somewhat in the background.
Right. And I feel like the whole movie is such a commentary on the time that we don't need to comment on it directly in that moment.
And then the next sequence is actually also one of my favorites. So you they go out into the rain and walk towards the castle, and then this is the song "Over at the Frankenstein Place," which is like such a funny like line in the song, and like a funny title, because they're letting you know like this place is weird, like weird shit's gonna happen at this place. So Brad and Janet are singing as they approach the castle, and again, a really beautiful song. The music is really deep, in my opinion. I think it's really meaningful. And I hesitate to take anything in this movie too literally, but if you're just listening to the lyrics without too much context of the rest of the movie, you can see it as like they're talking about letting light into life, like light overcoming darkness. I just think it's like really fascinating. It's fascinating lyrics. I mean, every song in this movie is like almost like super independent from each other. Like there's so many different styles and genres of music in this musical. I think that's what makes it really fun as well. Kind of like a Frankenstein musical.
Totally.
Um, right? So I'm curious like what how you interpret this song.
Yeah, I have I'm curious what you'll think. I'm curious what you'll think of my interpretation, and some things I didn't put in my notes because they're just thoughts that I've had so many times that they didn't really I, like, wrote things in the notes that I would not be able to remember, but my take on this song is metaphorical light and literal darkness. It comes back to that midnight quote about like what midnight means and like what it means to be able to like become yourself in the night at like without the risk of the expectations of the daytime. And so it's like there's a light in the darkness almost being like, and I think I take this because I take it in the context of the whole movie and not just the movie but the whole phenomenon in the community of like there's this beautiful thing waiting for you where you don't expect it to be, and it's always gonna be there, and I like the idea, right, of, like, there's a light in the darkness of everybody's life because I think we do all have that, and for some people, it's queerness, for some people, it's just, like, their weirdness that doesn't get to breathe often enough, but I just think we all have these things that, like, need I don't wanna say privacy or, like, shadow, but that need an arena that has closed itself off from these larger expectations to exist, and so I think of it as that. It's like moving into the darkness to feel the light, almost.
I love that so much. I would agree with that for sure. I think there's also an element, I don't know if this will be the right word, but an element of like this place is going to save them in some way because they are literally looking for help, right? Their car broke down and they see a light and they go, "Great, someone's going to help us." But I would go further as to say that what they're about to enter is an experience is going to save them from their normie selves and save them from their heteronormative, like literally heteronormative lives. And that is a good thing. And even though bad things happen throughout the movie, um, they're going to discover things about themselves that they never would have if they hadn't gone to the castle. And in some ways, I wish we got a bit more of a bit of a longer ending. Spoiler alert: after Frankenfurter dies, like I wish we had seen maybe a bit more of Brad and Janet before the movie ended to fully capture how they're now changed people. But in any case, you know that they're leaving that place. As the criminologist who narrates the story tells us, they're definitely going to be, it's going to be a night. What is it? He says something to the effect, it's going to be a night they'll,
They'll remember for a very long time.
a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing about Rocky Horror and all of these songs is that Rocky Horror has become something that does not belong to its creators anymore, which I think happens with all art, but I think it is like happened on a profound level with Rocky Horror that what I might have thought all of this stuff meant in the context of seeing it in the 70s when it didn't have this established community and like structure built around it might have been totally different, but this is all informed by my experiences with it and what it's meant in my life and like the community built around it. So it's so hard to take things out of that context too. So like I everything I'm saying is like so and I think that's one of the things about the movie too is like it's such a mirror. One of the things I noticed especially when I was reading this essay collection and something I appreciated about the collection was that it was not a collection of essays that were in agreement with each other. Like and I have quotes that will disagree with each other, I think even in the episode, but there are so many lenses to take on the characters, the songs, the story. Like there's so it shows you what you need to see from it. And so I think I say that to say that like if anyone is listening and their read on anything is like completely 180 different than mine, that's beautiful and lovely and like keep it. You know, like I really think that like we get what it's something that gives us what we need particularly and that might change day to day, year to year, and person to person. So, like, this is where I'm at right now with Rocky Horror. And I don't think it is where I've always been, and I don't think it's where I'll always be. And I think that's also one of the really beautiful things about it.
That's very true. And as much as I don't remember like my first time watching this movie, I feel like it must have contributed to who I was as a person, just in the sense that I've known these songs at the very least for so much of my life. And even though growing up I didn't have any close family or friends that were at least out as gay at the time. Like I didn't know anyone for a long time who was gay. I did grow up in a musical theater household, and then my dad co-founded a musical theater association for students. So like I obviously like knew about gay people, and either knew gay people just like super as acquaintances, or then obviously eventually like as friends, and then myself. But like all that to say that like I think just knowing that Rocky Horror existed could only have helped me as a human being. Like I feel like if I had only watched this for the first time, like I don't know, like a year ago, I don't know what kind of person I would have been. Like it's one of those things that's like leaves a really indelible mark on you. I think especially the younger you see it. Like I'm not shocked by anything in it. I'm shocked that it was came out such a long time ago. That's what shocks me, but I'm not shocked with what's in it. And I feel like if I was someone different, maybe I would be. I don't know what I'm trying to get at, but I'm just so grateful that I knew about it for so much of my life.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. It's just so impactful. It's like if you are like the other quote about how the people who get sucked in are getting sucked in from that first moment. If you are one of those people, this movie is going to have an impact on you. You may not realize it right away, or it may be like an earth shattering moment for you. Like, I think both of those things can be true, but you will over time just find the little ways that it has been so meaningful. And I think that's part of the beauty of it too. And this song is also kind of interesting because it's the most like straightforwardly like sounds like from a musical. It doesn't sound like it's from something crazy as much. A little bit when Riff Raff comes in, but like not so much. But yeah, and so they're walking and they're singing this song that sounds kind of normal still, but we can kind of tell we're getting less normal as we move through the song and closer to the castle. Then when they get to the castle, they knock at the door and Riff Raff is like, "You're wet," and Janet is like, "Yes, it's raining," and they're both kind of like, "What the hell's going on?" And they get inside, and this is like top 5 callbacks for me is someone this is just at the theater I go to. Like, I don't really know, but, like, at the theater I go to, someone will often go, "Describe the White House," right before Brad says it's probably some kind of hunting lodge for rich weirdos, which I
Yes,
just think
I
is
love
so
that.
funny. I just think
That's
it's so
great when
funny.
the callback is a call before, like leading into a line.
And there's a lot of those. There's a lot, and those are some of my favorites, I think, where you're, like, preempting what's about to be said. That's always really fun. But, yes, they get to the castle, and then we get to the time warp, which is obviously, like, the most iconic thing from the show. I think a lot of people know this song without knowing anything else about Rocky Horror. Like, this has really entered just, like, pop culture knowledge. Do you wanna set the scene for the time warp?
Oh god, it starts with this like is it a guitar like riff or whatever? It's just like I'm about to have the best fucking 3 minutes of my life. Like it's about to be a party. So there is actually a party happening at the castle, and it's the annual Transylvanian convention. Except that people talk about Transylvania as very often in vampire movies and where vampires come from, that sort of thing. Except in this case, it's an actual galaxy. We'll get to what the planet's called in a second. But so there's a convention happening. I think one person has like a little Irish flag with them that I'm always like, that's so cute. Like just like a little flag. um, so, anyways, it's basically talking about a specific dance that you can do called the time warp. Apart from that, the lyrics are just I don't know what to make of this song. It's just super fun, and the chorus is the actual instructions for the dance, like the criminologist that the movie cuts to every so often. He actually pulls down I don't even know what you call it, but like a poster of some sort, and like points to the dance moves like in a really clinical way, which is super fun. And several of the characters get their own verse. Magenta is god, she's such a vibe. Like I love how she moves and how she talks. Columbia has a really outgoing party outfit, and you just like can't not dance. Like it's telling you to do certain dance moves. You got to do them.
And the dance is so simple, which I think like adds to the fun. Like it's very like you can do it the first time you see the movie. It's not like you're out. It's not like hard.
I did it this morning while cleaning the bathroom. Like you could do both at the same time.
I love that for you. The callbacks in this movie are great. I am not going to talk about all of them because I will spend an hour talking about them. But yeah, the lyrics are kind of all about losing control and like being overcome by your senses and by what's around you and the darkness. But I think the most important, lyrically, I think the most important verse is Columbia's, because Columbia is a human. Riff Raff and Magenta are Transylvanians, which are aliens. We'll get into it. But Columbia is a human who has been like taken in by this group. And I do think that that makes her verse feel really different. And so her verse is about she's like walking around and this guy winks at her and you know she goes with him, and the last line of it, or the last two lines, is he stared at me and I felt a change, time meant nothing, never would again. Her verse particularly is less about like losing control and like getting caught in a whirlwind of senses and situations. It's like much more about, I think, her being taken in by Frankenfurter, right? And like her being taken in by this group and like realizing that she is fundamentally changed forever in the same way that we are about to watch happen to Brad and Janet.
Yeah, I love that read on it. I have to admit, I never really had the conscious thought that Columbia is not from their planet. I just never thought about it, but now I'm like, oh, right. It makes sense now that you've said it. But she's such a core part of their group. And I guess that would have also made sense with like her relationship with Eddie as well. But yeah, that that is clicking for me now. So thank you.
Yeah. I love the time warp. I love the party of it. And when the time warp ends, Brad and Janet are like backing away. They don't know what to do. And I love this part. And the callbacks here is before and after the line. So before the line, someone will say something stupid. And then Brad said, say, does anyone know how to Madison? And then in the audience, he'll say, I said, say something stupid, not say something stupid.
Love that. Yeah, I do know that like when I went to see it, a live production of it last year, like after almost everything Brad says, there's like a derogatory callback for him, and I really like that.
Yes, I also really like that. And yeah, so he is trying to still play the part of the big strong man. Janet is scared of everything that's going on, and the elevator starts to lower behind them, and we just hear the tapping of heels on the ground, and we finally get to meet Frankenfurter. Can I read this quote about Frankenfurter in this entry?
Please, because it is one of the most delicious entrances in cinema history.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in Jane Claire Bradley's essay, it says, our first glimpse of Dr. Frankenfurter's tapping rhinestone heels as he descends in the elevator to join the party. Excess, glamour, punk rock but with glitter. And then they go on to say, it was Frankenfurter who taught me how so much of queer glamour, queer charisma, and queer power gets its potency and impact from precisely this ambiguity. So, or maybe I'll get into that one after we talk about the song more. But he comes in and he's cloaked up, and you see these amazing heels, and the makeup is amazing, and Tim Curry is just amazing. And he's like cloaked up and he's introing, and like as the song moves through itself, we like throw the cloak off and reveal the sparkly corset and the fishnets, and the whole look comes together, and it's just like chef's kiss perfection.
It is, and I think it's a great moment to talk about a lot of the terms that are being used. So the song is called "Sweet Transvestite." I honestly, this might be my favorite song of the whole movie. And he says specifically in it that he's just a sweet transvestite from transsexual Transylvania. And That's a lot of words. That's a lot of words that we do not use anymore in everyday speech. And I just I'm coming at this from being a cis person, and so anything that I say about this, does not hold as much water as trans people. Like, totally, I'm accepting of that. But I have always processed this song as like such a cool punk rock, fun, campy, exciting song. And like, again, this is the song that makes me think, like, how the fuck did this movie get made and put on cinema screens? How did, the US government not ban it? Like, I'm just shocked that it was made when it was made, just in terms of how society was at the time, not because I think queer people didn't exist at the time. So I would just love to know, like, how you process it. I think it's a we can get into like the details of the song. There's like the breaking of the fourth wall. He looks at the camera so, oh, like, I cannot even think of the words to describe like how iconic,
Deliciously, just
deliciously. Like,
deliciously.
Tim Curry's performance is one for the history books, but I understand that it can evoke really strong feelings for people just because of the terminology. So I'll throw it at you. Like, how do you process this song?
Yeah, well, some of it is just, like, the date, right? Like, we just use different lingo now. Some of it, I think, comes down to, like, back to this mirror of, like, what is it that you wanna see in Frank? Because I think to some people, Frank is a woman, like, Frank is a trans woman. I don't read Frank that way. I read Frank as someone who is engaged in such a high level of gender fuckery, because I think that's what I resonate with more. So when I think of I actually know some people today who do refer to themselves as transsexuals, and so I'm interested. I would love to, like, hear what those people would say, I guess, about this. And a transvestite is a different thing than a trans person. Like, a transvestite is actually a thing, and I think we sometimes forget that because oftentimes transgender people are called transvestites in a derogatory way, but a transvestite is like someone who gets their kicks dressing as a woman. It's not someone who is a woman. And I actually think that that seems accurate for Frank. I don't know that Frank is a cis man. Like, I don't know that that feels accurate. And Frank is an alien. Like, to be clear, Frank is like outside of all of this anyway.
Frank is an alien. That's a great, yeah, that is it, right? Like,
Yes, but I see Frank as an alien who has like taken in information about Earth and like the people on Earth, right? And gets his kicks, whether it's like sexual or just like empowerment, whatever kicks they are, out of putting on these heels and these fishnets and this corset and doing his makeup. I, I don't know that it's an inaccurate assessment of him, actually. I think it's totally valid to be offended. Like, I think, like, if someone tells me that this is upsetting to them or this feels inappropriate or wrong, I'm not going to tell them that they're wrong. Like, I think I see the validity there. My read of him is not a trans woman. Like, that's not how I perceive him at all. That doesn't mean that if someone else perceives him that way, that they're wrong. I just don't think I'm wrong either. Like, I think that, like I said, I think this movie is really a mirror and you see in it what you need to. And I just see playing. I see playing around with gender and self-expression, and that's what Frank represents to me. So to me, I kind of take no issue with it.
yeah, I honestly think I process it the exact same way. I again, the terminology is shocking to me, just that it was put on a movie screen. It's not actually um, shocking to me in other ways, and I totally understand and agree with that vibe of like, he's playing, and like, that's, to me, that's what queerness is. Like, it's not one thing, but I think what queerness really boils down to is breaking out of norms and not feeling the need to uh, to just be anything. Like, to, I don't know, I'm not eloquent right now, but it just, to me, is like, it's a song that embodies what queerness is, at least to me. So I don't, I really appreciate your thoughts on that.
That's exactly what it is. And I think we'll get more into this later, but I think that we can kind of see a little bit of Richard O'Brien's like kind of problematic perspectives here, not in the language so much, but in the playing in gender. And like he in his discussions of gender comes back to this idea of like a natural woman or a real woman and says very problematic things that I think people are right to be offended by and I think are harmful. But I think that there is a part of him beneath all of his own self-loathing that knows that there's no such thing and is not able to accept that within himself enough to communicate it in a way that doesn't sound horrible. And I'm not saying people shouldn't be upset with him. Like, I'm not trying to defend him. I'm just saying feel like I see what's going on there. And I think that this is the first moment in the movie where I feel like I see what's going on there. But in the Jane Claire Bradley essay in Absolute Pleasure, they write, "It was Frankenfurter who taught me how so much of queer glamour, queer charisma, and queer power gets its potency and impact from following desire and embracing the strange, unknown, and extremes." He sets the other characters on a journey of experimentation, expansion, and ultimately defiance. And we could argue that this is a necessary function of Frank. It's a hell of a responsibility being the loudest, most glamorous, and almost literally balls out seductive, sexy, and psychotic leader of any circle or subculture. But in embodying this role, Frank gives those around him a permission slip towards their own arcs of discovery. So this is the role he's given in the movie, but it's also the role that the movie takes on, I think, for so many of its viewers, right? So this playing in it and this deciding to be, because at some point, and we don't see this happen, but at some point, Frank decided to be this way, right? Decided to be the most glamorous person in the room, decided to be the sexiest and most seductive person in the room at all times, to not just embody it, but to believe it about himself. And I think that that is so embodied in the song that the song couldn't be any different than it is and still work. It just couldn't.
Also, I know this is like less serious, but I really appreciate his little dance moves. There's one moment that he does like this little shoulder roll thing with Columbia, and the amount of joy and like dopamine I get from watching that is so high. Like, it's absolutely adorable. I love that. And then we get towards the end of the song, and we get a line that is one of my favorite lines ever, which is that Frankenfurter has gone back into the elevator and he's inviting Brad and Janet up to the lab with him because he is like essentially a mad scientist as well as a really cool person. He invites them up to go see this creation of his. And he says, "I see you shiver with anticipation." Right. And so he like deliberately holds out the word anticipation. And it's like, oh, it's so good. It's so
And the
good.
callback for that moment is begging him to say it.
Oh,
Like, the
yes.
whole
Yes.
audience is just going, "Say it, say it, say it." In, like, varying degrees of seriousness and almost, like, sexy begging. Like, it's so like, the tones that come out are so different, but it's so fun, and that whole sequence is so fun. And there's the line too where the whole thing is, right, "Come up to the lab and see what's on the slab. I see you shiver with anticipation." And then he says, "But maybe the rain isn't really to blame, so I'll remove the cause, but not the symptom." And he doesn't totally clarify this, but, like, Janet is wet and shaking. And he's saying, "I'll remove the cause," and he leaves. So he's like, "The rain is not doing this to you. I am doing this to you. So Imma get out of here for a minute, let you cool off." And I just think that is so iconic. And like you said, iconic is gonna be a word we keep coming back to because that was basically invented to talk about this movie.
That was my letterbox review for my latest rewatch. It was just like the word iconic was invented for this. Like, I don't, what other word is more perfect? Yeah, I love that. Um, I also love the, well, love, this is a weird moment, I guess, but they, Columbia, or someone, they start undressing Brad and Janet in order to go up to the lab because they're going to give them these, like lab coats, but it's just like it's like, what is happening? Why are all of a sudden, why are they removing their clothes? But I think it could also, it could be like yet another phase of their transformation, which is like, take off your normie clothes and you're about to go experience something very otherworldly. You have to like look and dress different to do that.
Yeah, one of I don't have a quote for this, but one of the essays in the book talks about this moment and how Brad is, like, putting on airs of, like, "Oh, like, we'll pull out the aces when the time is right," and he's pretending that he's gonna defend Janet, but it seems that he is very okay with this, and that there's a part of him that just wants this and wants to let this happen, and I think that's the start of the breakdown of, like, Brad's masculinity and character, is that he is just letting himself be undressed. He's passively experiencing the moment and just, like, letting it happen.
Yeah, yeah, I like that read. So they go up to the lab, and Frankenfurter is in another really, I'm so sorry, but iconic outfit. Basically, the way I describe it is that it's housewife meets scientist. So he's wearing like this green lab coat, but he has on this necklace of pearls. He has these pink, what are they called? Like latex.
If you really look at them, they're not even really latex gloves, they look like dish gloves. They
Yes,
look
yes,
like pink
exactly.
dish gloves.
Yeah, but he's still in his high heels, you know, and so he just looks like it's like a trad wife, but queer. Like, I don't know, like, it's kind of that. But what I will point out that I love the most is that he's wearing a pink triangle on the lab coat. What I've always found weird about it until I finally looked it up was I couldn't tell if, like, when I watched the movie, it looks red on screen, but the symbol of the pink triangle is was already known to me, and so I finally was like, okay, is this the reference? I think it is, and it is. So basically, um, the triangle was a symbol that the Nazis used in concentration camps, for gay men, perhaps gay people in general. I'm not entirely sure about that. And the and it's meant to point downwards, but with Frankenfurter he's wearing the pink triangle pointing upwards, and nowadays that's more used as a symbol of gay pride to kind of subvert the um, atrocities of what went on with the original pink triangle.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a really important piece of it, right? Like, uh this film does not talk so much about queer tragedy, but it does make sure that, like, we know that he knows, almost, because for all we like, without that, maybe he just thinks everything's fine. Like, he's an alien. He's an alien. Like, we have to keep reminding ourselves, like, he's an alien. He could very easily not know about that, and here he is wearing the symbol, right? So we have some inkling that he knows that the world that these humans are coming from is not really a safe world. It's not really a world that allows this level of gender fuckery to exist.
Yeah, for sure. And then the next sequence is basically the creation of Rocky. So it's also fun because like you start to see that Janet is starting to like really fawn over Frankenfurter. And like she's starting to really be like really coquettish and like enamored with him, which is nice. And Frankenfurter has to manipulate like 10 different machines. And then he like there's a whole sequence, a really long sequence of him turning knobs of and different colors are like shooting out, and then he has to close each one, and it's just really frantic and chaotic and really fun. um, but it creates this kind of like rainbow situation in which this creation of Rocky appears. And then I need to ask you about the next song. So this song is not on the like original movie album for whatever reason. It's the Sword of Damocles. Basically, it's Rocky singing, and he's literally just been born, except he's like a fully grown man with abs. And like I don't know what's going on. Like like he's just having an existential crisis. Basically, like he was born, and then he's immediately like, guys, I'm so fucking depressed. And I just find
Yeah.
it like it's hysterical to me.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that, like, based on what you just said, you do know what's going on. Like, that is, like, basically all there is to it. I would say, like, lyrically, the song is very, like, doom and gloom. I mean, the opening, right? The sword of Damocles is hanging over my head, and I get the feeling someone's gonna be cutting the thread. So he has an imminent sense of doom and mortality from the moment that he is birthed or created or whatever. And you know, he says his life is a misery, his life is a mystery. Like he's literally like just born yesterday as but a man. Like he's that trope but a man. And he's having an existential crisis, and he in one of the essays, I don't have a quote for this, but in one of the essays, the person writing about this song describes him as like a mayfly. Like he's born and he just knows that he like needs to fornicate and then die. Like and like that's his whole existence wrapped in a nutshell. And that is so scary.
You're so right though, the born sexy yesterday trope. I That's exactly what his character is. And this is probably like the only time it's shown through like a male character. Like I never put that together, but he's sexual. I mean, he's created to be sexual, a sexual being for Frankenfurter. Like that's what I guess the next song is about, the I Can Make You a Man. Which is just, yeah, Frankenfurter just being like, so it's funny, like he's explicit but while using tons and tons and tons of euphemisms, but the way that the song is sung, it's like just so sexual. But there's one line that I love right before that song starts, where Magenta and Riff Raff are basically complimenting Frankenfurter's work in creating Rocky, and then Columbia goes, "He's okay." It's just
And
like
he goes,
perfect.
"Okay. I think we can do better than that." The callback there, like, after she says he's okay is, "Get your tits off my tank."
I mean, yes, because like she shrugs, but she's like resting on top of the tank that he was. Oh
And
my
then
god,
she
that's
pulls back
perfect.
when he, like, flips out, and then he's like, "I didn't make him for you,"
Yeah.
like, whatever, and he's showing him off, and he goes and he asks Janet what she thinks, and I love this. Janet says, "I don't like men with too many muscles," and then the
It's such a
audience
funny
callback
line.
in that, which is first of all a lie, and second of all, the audience callback for that is just one big one.
Yes, that was one that people shouted last year. Yes, love that.
Yeah. And then, yeah, then we get right into I Can Make You a Man, and it's all workout euphemisms and sexual innuendo. There's my dog howling. Hold on one second.
Oh, it's so cute.
She does that at sirens. It's all sexual innuendos and euphemisms and eh, like sexy glances and working out and rippling muscles. And it's so funny because like I've talked about this with some of my friends, but there are some people who reach like a level of hotness where where they stop being attractive and just become like kind of interesting. And that's kind of how I feel about Rocky, like the rippling muscles. I'm like not attracted to him, but I'm like, how does your body do that? Like what's happening like while he's doing all these different workouts?
I get
Um
concerned for people sometimes because I'm like, I don't know. There's a level of like going to the gym after which it's not actually healthy anymore. um, and like, this is obviously not the case in this movie, but just generally, like, if the gym is your whole life, I feel sad for you. I have to be honest. Like, that's sad.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it's funny because even in the song, Frankenfurter says, like, "Such strenuous living, I just can't understand," as he's, like, encouraging Rocky to make his whole life about working out and staying sexy. And it's funny because in I Can Make You a Man, he says, "In just 7 days, I can make you a man." And we have literally no like, it is never clarified what that means or, like, what's gonna happen in 7 days because this skips ahead a little bit, but they immediately get married and, like, have sex. So, like, I don't know what the 7 days is about, and it's, like, never actually clarified. And so, like, the world may never know, but it is something I think about often.
Because it's not even like that he created him in 7 days, because he just created him in 5 minutes.
Right,
So either way, the 7 days is not talked about past the song.
right. And so there's I Can Make You a Man, and then there's a reprise, but in between, our character Eddie bursts out of the freezer, and we get the song Hot Patootie. And this, I mean, Sweet Transvestite is my favorite song, obviously, but this is very high up there for me. I love this song. I love how it characterizes Eddie as just like he just loves girls and like he just want and like not in a way that feels particularly creepy actually. Later when he's represented by his uncle in the song about Eddie, it's much darker, but Eddie's representation of himself is like I'm in the car with this girl. I'm swept away by her perfume. I'm fumbling with her belt as she's telling me she's all mine. Like it's so like kind of weird. It's like sexual, but it's sexual in this very wholesome way. But it's wrapped in this like hard rock and roll and leather and like this really like butch guy. Like it's such an interesting dynamic with Eddie.
Also, I just love the fact that he's been frozen in this vault for God knows how long. And when he bursts out, he has his saxophone with him. Like, it's just on his person and he plays it. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I love that for you.
Yeah, I guess they wanted him to have it in the afterlife or whatever. But, but so we get Hot Patootie and he's riding his motorcycle around and he's dancing with Columbia and he swoops her up like she's nothing. And I just like, oh, like it's so good. It's so good. I want to be like swooped up and just picked up like I'm nothing so badly.
It's a really sweet moment. Like, Columbia clearly loves him so much. She's so excited to see him. Um, and then her dreams are dashed because Frankenfurter kills him. I mean, is it really? Is it just because he doesn't want him? Like, what? Like, why does Frankenfurter even kill him?
I think that it depends on your read. I mean, I think for one, he's just done with him and he sees people as disposable, which is like a whole theme of the movie and Frank's downfall. I think the other side is like he's jealous. He doesn't really want Columbia anymore and he doesn't really want Eddie anymore, but he sees them love each other and is like, no, 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 none of that. Like, I have to be the pole around which all of this revolves. And so if you two are loving each other in your own thing, that's unacceptable to me.
Yeah, that makes sense to me for sure.
And Columbia is so much more like ingratiated into their weird little family that she's not as disposable as Eddie is, maybe. That's my own whatever, like interpretation, but that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, and he's just so focused on his own pleasure and what he like, even just creating Rocky, and then Columbia and Janet being like, Rocky's fine. And he's like, well, it's not for you. He's for me. And I think he's great. And you should agree with me. So, of course, there is, as much as he's like such an iconic character and he's so fun to watch, he obviously has flaws to him. The biggest of which is that, yeah, everything revolves around him.
Yeah, and so after he kills Eddie, he pretty seamlessly goes into the "I Can Make You a Man" reprise, and I love this moment with Janet where he's singing about all the muscles and, like, all the different body parts and workouts and things, and then he opens his mouth to sing his next line, and instead of him singing the next line, we see and hear Janet, like, across the room say, "I'm a muscle fan," which I just think is so funny. And then obviously Brad is like, "What the fuck?" And she's like, "Oh, oop, oop, sorry."
It's so cute. It's sung in such a high pitched way. And I do want to have a little aside to praise Susan Sarandon because I've heard her talk about how she was pretty scared to do this movie because she's not a singer. And I would say that's pretty obvious, but I think it's absolutely perfect for Janet. I think if Janet, in this movie at least, I think if Janet has like a super perfect singing voice, I I don't know what I think, but it just wouldn't work for me. And I don't think her voice sucks, actually. I think it's perfectly fine. But you can tell she's not a singer. So I don't know. It makes her feel like more real. And she does have a really high pitched, like, lilt to it. And I think it just actually was like a perfect decision.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think if it was too polished sounding, it would kind of take me out of it. Yeah, so they kind of finish this song and this sequence, and then Janet and Brad get sent to separate rooms in the house. And I think this is like maybe the most controversial moment in the movie where basically like sequentially Frankenfurter goes into each of their bed areas. They have like canopy beds and poses as the other one. So he poses as Brad with Janet and he poses as Janet with Brad and like hits on them, whatever, and very quickly is revealed to be himself. and proceeds to like have some level of sexual contact with each of them.
Yeah, this is always the scene that I feel conflicted about and probably would wish it to be different, but there's a lot to dissect in it. What I find fascinating, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding, the way that the scene goes. So first he goes to Janet's room, and it's really ingenious because as a viewer you are looking through a curtain, so it kind of, I guess, looks like Brad. And also they use, I forget the actor's name, but the actor who plays Brad, they do use his literal voice as the voiceover. So if it's your first time watching, you kind of have to assume it's Brad at first. And then the thing is that like when Frankenfurter like gets in the bed with Janet, it seems like it's out after like 2.5 seconds. Like they have sex for 2 seconds, and then it's revealed that it's actually Frankenfurter, and Janet's like, "Oh my god." And she, so something important that she says is, "You tricked me. I wouldn't have. I've never." And she trails off. But for, so just coming back to the 2 seconds of it all, it's all, I've always just been like, wait, is this just like just because they don't want to spend time with us having to watch them have sex? Or it's like, did they actually, because like literally it's 2 seconds and then she's like, oh my god, we just had sex, I've never had sex. I'm like, wait, what?
I think it's just touching. I actually don't think they have sex. I think it's just touching,
Okay.
and I don't think because in later when she gets to touch me, she says, "I've never like I thought there's no use getting into heavy petting." So presumably she's never been like touched below the belt.
That
So
makes so
that's how
much more
I interpreted that.
sense.
They're. I mean, and like queerness, you can argue that that is sex, but they're. I don't think that they're like P and V. Like I don't think they're like doing it.
Okay, that helps in a way. I mean, maybe not. Okay.
It doesn't help with the controversy, but it might help you understand what's just like literally
Yeah.
going on.
Like, it's just like a weird,
Yeah.
I don't know, I just never really understood that, but that definitely makes more sense.
Mhm. And she says actually, and I think this furthers the point, which is why I'm pretty sure I'm right. Like I'm pretty sure this isn't just my interpretation because she says to think I was saving myself, and he says, "I assure you, you're not spent yet." And then his head goes down. So I actually don't think that they have like whatever like intercourse at all. I actually don't
That
think that
makes sense.
happens in the
No.
movie. I actually don't think she does that until she does that with Rocky. So I actually don't think that even happens.
That helps a ton because
Yeah.
all these years I've just been like, weird. Okay, it
Yeah.
took 2 seconds for sex.
Yeah, doesn't, like, address, obviously, the consent issues here, but I think, like, just I think logistically, that makes it make more sense. I love one of the parts that I love in these sequences is that they're each like, "What have you done with Janet, Brad?" And he goes, "Nothing. Why? Do you think I should?" And, like, it's just so funny. But I again, I think with so much of this movie, I think the criticisms are totally valid. I think that to touch on, I think particularly people who read Frankenfurter as a trans woman, this is extremely like problematic and like this idea of like tricking people and all of that stuff and obviously like coercion. I think that this is all there to be looked at and talked about. I just don't think it aligns with like how I'm perceiving what's going on. And so I'm glad that this conversation is happening, like, in a broader sense, but in the essay I referenced earlier that talks the one about lies and, like, the lies contained within the movie, that writer talks about this scene in a way that feels a lot more related to how I view it. And then there's another one that I didn't quote that's a lot about, like, kink, and that writer actually says, "I've been sexually assaulted before, and, like, when I watch this scene, it doesn't feel like the times I've said no and didn't want it, it feels like the times I've said no and did." And I that's how I read it too. And again, I think if you are upset by this, you are right. Like, I think that that's okay. But back to the essay by, Magdalene Visaggio about the lies, this is the moment where basically the lies are dismantled. So it says, "Thus are Brad and Janet's lies systematically dismantled. Frank's deception boils down to a wig and a voice, and is so ineffective as to collapse almost immediately as many times as it's tried. It turns out that the truth was far more effective at tempting them than the lie ever could have been. Had it been Brad arriving in Janet's room, for example, there is no reason to believe they would have had sex. It's not clear it's something they even terribly wanted from each other." And that's kind of like how I feel. Like, I don't think that they were that interested in each other. And I think that it was maybe knowing that something was off that made them interested. And like I said, if that's not your read, I totally like I if this makes you actually not like the movie, I think that that's okay. Like, I think that this is a valid thing to be like, "You know what? I like that's not it for me." That's totally okay. For me, in just my perception of the movie overall, my perception of all these characters overall, and, like, the way that's evolved over time, I just don't think they don't want it, and I don't really think he's tricking them. I think that he I don't know what to call it. Like, because I wanna be like, I think he's kind of freeing them, but I also think it's, like, problematic to say that as well, and it's not exactly that. It's like he's showing up and, like, I don't know, yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how to explain it.
I am following you. Like I agree with your read on it, and I really appreciate how you process it. I think mostly I do process it the same way. I mean, certainly from the point after which they see it's Frankenfurter, they both of them, Brad and Janet, then do continue their
And
sexual relations with
arguably
him.
are more interested, like,
Oh yeah.
arguably with much more enthusiasm once they realize that it's Frank, which, like, fair, he's hotter than literally both of them put together.
Yeah, for sure. I think what I bristle at is the tricking, not obviously not at all in terms of him being any kind of trans identity. The tricking is clearly as like, oh, I thought you were Brad, but it's really you, Frankenfurter. Um, I think it just can be upsetting to see that, like to think that someone is being intimate with you and it turns out it's someone else. That is a bit upsetting to me, but certainly I do appreciate the read on it, which is like, yeah, actually, once they can see it's Frankenfurter, they're like, okay, let's go, and that's like a huge turning point in the movie for both Brad and Janet, where they're releasing themselves from the shackles of heteronormativity. They're literally experiencing pleasure, maybe the most genuine pleasure they might have experienced up until then in their lives. And also in terms of Frankenfurter, like I feel like he probably sees himself as this grand liberator of humans, right? Of like, come into my castle, come to my party, come see what's on the slab, like come into my world and I'm gonna free you. I'm a queer person and whatever. Obviously he doesn't say that, but like the way I see it is like he's like, I'm this big grand queer fun entity and I want to take you normies away from the shackles of heteronormativity. And yeah, the exact way he goes about it is like, I do think could have been done slightly differently, but I think ultimately the result of that is like Brad and Janet are like, okay, yeah, I'm different now.
Yeah, absolutely, and even later, I have some more quotes about Brad and Janet and, like, in what ways they're different and, like, what that means for them. But, yeah, so this sequence happens while Frank is off, like, away from Rocky. Riff Raff and Magenta kind of, like, attack Rocky, and he runs away, and they send the dogs after him. Janet starts to kind of freak out, and she is going to, like, the main lab room, and she sees the aftermath of Brad and Frank. Brad is, like, sitting in Frank's robe smoking a cigarette, and Frank is, like, lounging on the bed, and she feels betrayed, but she also says, "How could I have done this to you?" And then she finds Rocky in his tank, who is scared and a little bit injured, and here's one of my favorite callbacks is here too when his hand is injured and she rips a piece of her skirt off to wrap around him and like you'll be like it's Sarandon wrap and I love that.
Oh, I love that.
And they have this moment and we go back to the criminologist who like we need to like do I think at the end we need to just like talk about the criminologist as a concept, but he's the narrator and we flash back to him and he defines like emotion and talks about how Janet is now like a slave to emotion and she is clearly like she touches his hand and like something happens to her and then we get into Janet's kind of solo song touch a touch me and I like this song is her like big transformation, I think even more than her time with Frank.
Yeah, totally. I mean, going further with what you were saying earlier, which is that with Rocky, this is the first time she would have, like, I guess, penetrative sex, if you want to call it, like, have different terms like that. But so she is like, she, I think, got really like inspired by her time with Frankenfurter like 5 minutes ago, and is now a muscle fan. So she has now made her way to wanting to do something with Rocky. And it's like, again, a song where every time I listen to it and see it, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I knew about this song when I was like 10. Like, this is like so kind of crazy to me. But it's really explicit. Like, it's extremely explicit. Janet literally says, I want to be dirty. And she is shedding any idea of her being this like schoolgirl, innocent girl next door character anymore. And she's trying to be her real self. She's trying to be a real person, and that this is how it looks like for her. And for her it means like getting in touch with her sexuality and her desires, and clearly not being ashamed of that anymore. And what I do find kind of fun, I don't know if that's the right word, but I do kind of appreciate that the framing of this song is that Columbia and Magenta are watching Janet and Rocky through a camera. Again, like, not, don't do that in real life to anyone, but in the context of this weird, crazy night everyone's having, it's just funny because like they look at Janet, and like when she's explaining, like, I've never even, what did she say? I've never even,
I'd only ever
oh,
kissed before.
right, thank you.
And then he's like, "You mean she?" Yeah.
I love it. Magenta is just like, oh, the most suave character. I love her so much.
I know.
Anyways, yeah, Janet and Rocky have sex in the like tub that he was created in, and there's all these rainbow colors again. It's so, so, so
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I think softens me to Columbia and Magenta watching her, which again, don't do this in real life, like this is gross, but I think there are two things here that make me like it in the context of the movie. And I think one of them is that they seem to have this like really lovely kind of sapphic light connection, and they're touching each other. They're not touching each other really explicitly, but they are touching each other in ways that feel highly suggestive and feel so playful and fun and like light in a way that the sex in the rest of this movie doesn't. Not that it feels heavy and bad, but it's such a different tone between the two of them. And then the other part of it is that they're kind of cheering her on. They're like, "Good for her. Like, she's getting with Rocky." They're like, "She does," like there's an air, and I think this speaks to them all being women, like, to whatever extent Magenta is a woman, Magenta is an alien. Like, I don't really know, but they're all women, and I think there's something so nice about watching these two kind of sapphic coded women watching Janet come into her sexuality and being like, "Hell yeah. I love this for her."
Yeah, they're like proud of her, you know, and I love that. I think it's a really great moment, and it's a really cinematic moment as well.
Yeah, and so the end of this song has this, like, wonderful orgiastic sequence of her, like, Rocky is on top of her, and all of a sudden we get glimpses of every single character on top of her repeating the line "creature of the night," and it's like and I think it speaks to, like, the way this overall experience is impacting her. She's so turned on by everyone in the house and this whole experience that she, like, doesn't even know how to handle it and is channeling it into this sexual interaction she's having with Rocky. But I just love that, like, the way that I read that is, like, she's thinking about all of them. She's, like, having sex with all of them, and she's loving it, and she's loving it every second.
And I love that for her. Good for Janet.
Right, like, good for yes, good for Janet.
The next sequence is really funny. We finally get an appearance by Dr. Scott, who is the teacher that Brad and Janet were on their way to see. But it turns out he was going to the castle to try and find Eddie, who is his nephew and has obviously disappeared. And Frankenfurter does a kind of unnecessary slash necessary thing of, he uses this like magnetic pull machine thing to like magnetically get Dr. Scott up the stairs, Is it like because he's in a wheelchair and there's no, but there's an elevator. It's weird.
I think it's just like I think it's just for our benefit of
Yeah,
watching
it's
him
just
get
a
dragged around
silly
the house.
sequence.
Yeah, I also think it's like they probably like to disorient him on
Mm.
some level too, because the house is accessible. I don't know if you've ever seen the meme that's like, if Frankenfurter's castle is accessible, what's your excuse?
Ah, love that. Yes. Oh, that's so
Yeah.
true. Because in the lab, there's like the like
There's a
I guess
ramp,
a
yeah.
yeah. Oh my god, I
It's
love
not
that.
really like, in real life, that wouldn't be
Yeah.
accessible, you would, like, fly down the ramp, like, out of control, but whatever, we're going with it, and,
The 70s
uh
accessible.
yes, yes, and in this process, everyone kind of files into the lab, and they catch Janet and Rocky in the tank, and this is the part where they're all seeing each other and calling out each other's names, so there's this sequence where Janet's like, "Brad," and then he's like, "Janet," and then they're like, "Dr. Scott, Janet, Brad, Rocky," and this is one of my favorite callbacks too. It's like, it's Janet, Dr. Scott, Janet, Brad, Rocky, and then the audience calls out Bullwinkle, and I love
What's the
that.
significance of
Like
that?
Rocky and Bullwinkle,
Oh,
like the
okay.
cartoon.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
like, I don't know, it's like I don't think it's very significant, but it cracks me up every time.
It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
so like it's part of what makes this movie so like over the top and like a satire. Like it's just these moments where you just have to like laugh out loud. And then do they go into the dinner scene happens right after?
Yeah, Magenta, like, summons them all for dinner.
Yes. Basically, Dr. Scott is trying to explain, well, he sings a song, Eddie, that you had mentioned earlier about how, like, Eddie was essentially born a troublemaker, which is so sad. Like, no child is born bad, like, whatever. But he's saying, like, I got this note from him that he's in trouble and I had to come investigate all this stuff. They also basically find out that so Frankenfurter made someone cook Eddie into a meal and they're in the process of eating him and they all like realize it. I forget what Frank says and they look down and Columbia is like, "Excuse me,"
Yeah.
and goes and like screams.
Yes,
Oh,
he's like, "We're here to discuss Eddie," and then
oh yeah.
Columbia is like, "Eddie?" And then Frank, like, revs the carving tool at her and says, "It's a rather tender subject," and then, like, you see everyone realize it, and that's a funny callback moment too, because 'cause they're like, "Brad gets it, Janet gets it, Rocky gets it, Rocky doesn't care because he keeps eating."
Oh yeah, Rocky's in his own world.
Yeah, and this is, like, the interesting thing, right, where, like, Eddie's song about himself, has this, like, teenage boy vibe to it, and this song, yeah, frames him as a troublemaker from birth, but really talks about his behavior after his mom died, and that he got into, like, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and he was a heroin addict, which there are a lot, I didn't have time to, like, dive into this as much as I'd have liked to, but there are a lot of pieces of this movie that people interpret to be related to heroin use and addiction, and Eddie is kind of a good stand-in for that because there's the reference to him shooting up junk, and there's a lot of pieces throughout, like, the void calling and time warp, like, there's a lot of moments. I would really I mean, I think I can't imagine I won't talk about this movie again, so, like, hopefully next time I will get to that, but I think it's something worth looking into if you haven't. I don't know how much I read that in the movie, but again, I think this movie shows us what we need to see, and I do think that those perspectives are really interesting, so just, something to dip your toes in and look into.
I had not thought about that at all, so I appreciate that. And I think that does have a lot of like credence to it. I think yeah, I think overall I don't think the movie is like necessarily providing a message about drugs specifically, but I can totally understand how that can be framed in certain ways, particularly yeah, with Eddie that can make sense.
Yeah, and I will say, I think I feel I I have, like, this thing where, like, when I see someone in, like, a kind of unmanageable and chaotic situation, and they're kind of stranded on their own and, like, don't really have a way out or, like, a way to get control of things, I had that's, like I have, like, recurring nightmares like that where I'm, like, like, not, like, Rocky Horror, but just, like, where I'm kind of stuck in some sort of really out of control situation, and I don't really have a way out, and the people who could maybe help me out, like, aren't helping me out, and I'm just, like, stuck there. So, there's, like there's a moment in this scene, and it's like 2 seconds, where Dr. Scott is, like, taking his napkin off the table and, like, putting it on his lap, and just, like, you can see him trying so hard to cling to some sense of normality, and if I were to let myself, like, the movie could be ruined for me in that moment. Not because it's, like, a bad moment, but just because I feel so bad for him, and, like, I'm glad it's so fleeting because I would just be in, like, unbearable distress for him if everything else wasn't so, like, absurd and ridiculous, but it does make me feel so upset for a second every time because I'm like, "Oh, like, you're just in this, you didn't wanna be in this."
I know. Like, I mean, for most of it, he kind of does remain fairly chill. But yeah, he's very stressed. And I can totally understand that. Like, that's a terrible situation to be in. And also, like, if Brad and Janet maybe had, if their car hadn't broken down and they had made it to Dr. Scott's, the night would have turned out differently for everyone. So there's also that. So yeah, things take a turn.
Big time, and eventually, Frankenfurter throws a tantrum, essentially, and, like, pulls the tablecloth off, and not only are they having meatloaf for dinner, but Eddie Meatloaf is the coffin is, like, glass on top, and that's the table that they have been eating on.
I never actually like went so far as to realize like yeah they're having meatloaf and the actor well the person playing Eddie is meatloaf literally.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so then this, like, sets everybody off freaking out, obviously, and we get to the next song, which I have never realized this, but is not actually on the soundtrack that I listened to, and in our notes, we called it "Wise Up, Janet Weiss." I don't really know what it's called, but that's what we'll go with, and this is Frank finally being confronted for really the first time in the movie and probably his life.
Yeah, because Janet I think is trying to comfort Rocky and then Frankenfurter is like absolutely not. He's really mad at her. He chases her up the stairs back to the lab. I forget the context of this line, but I really like the line he says in the song a mental mindfuck can be nice. I think it's just like a nice nugget of a line.
It is, and before that, like, not immediately before, but earlier in the song, he is hurling insults at Janet. He says, "You're as sensual as a pencil." He says, "Your apple pie don't taste so nice." Like, he went from seducing her to, again, like, throwing a tantrum. Like, he is so unable to not be the center of attention and the center of people's worlds that this just, like, totally sets him off. And he uses the sonic transducer to glue them to the floor, basically, so they can't move, and this is, like, the this is the part where they're calling him a hot dog, and his name's Frankenfurter, so it's obviously hilarious.
And is it Brad or Janet who's like they each get a line. They say you're a hot dog, then they say something else, and then he
So, Brad and Dr. Scott say the same thing. They say, "You're a hot dog, but you better not try to hurt her, Frankenfurter."
turns them to marble, right?
Yes, and then he turns them to marble, and then Janet says, "You're a hot dog," and he zaps her right away, and the callback in that moment is like, "Eh, it wouldn't have rhymed anyway."
Yeah,
Because hurt me doesn't rhyme with
yeah.
Frankenfurter.
I just find it so funny. He's like, "Fuck this hot dog line!" Like, shut up.
Right. And this is where the movie takes, like, a more profound turn, and Columbia storms in, seeing all of this happen, and she says, "I can't stand any more of this. First, you spurn me for Eddie, then you throw him off like an old overcoat for Rocky. You chew people up and then you spit them out again. I loved you. Did you hear me? I loved you. Yeah, and what did it get me? I'll tell you, a big nothing. You're like a sponge. You take, 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 and drain others of their love and emotion. Well, I've had enough." And like, for the first time, someone is really saying to Frank, like, "You cannot treat people this way just because you're having a good time. Like, you don't get to do whatever you want for the sake of your own pleasure and enjoyment." And he he turns her to marble too, and then he looks over and Rocky is, like, posing and, like, being sexy, and so he turns him to marble too.
Everyone's just this marble statue. I mean, it's gorgeous. And then there's such a great line. Frankenfurter turns to the camera and says, "It's not easy having a good time." And he follows it up with, "Even smiling makes my face ache." It's like lovely. He's like, I know y'all are watching me. Like, let me just break the fourth wall for a second.
Totally. Totally. And so then he gets them all dressed in their like performance outfits for the floor show. They're all in fishnets and corsets and feathers and sparkles. And he unzaps them. And that's where we get to Rose Tint My World, which is like 3 songs put together. So it's the floor show, it's Don't Dream It, and it's Wild and Untamed Thing kind of rolled into one song.
It's very elaborate. I think it's like the most complex, elaborate, kind of profound moment of the show because each song is long. There's kind of reprises of different of each one, I think, and it's the whole. It takes up the whole rest of the movie.
Hmm. And so the refrain of Rose Tints My World is Rose tints my world and keeps me safe from my trouble and pain. This is like part of the heroine take as well, but I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not really gonna get into that so much. But they all have their own kind of verse here. And so we start with Columbia, who's like, it was great when it all began, and like talks about how this was so great and then turned into something bad. And then we have Rocky, who's like, I'm just 7 hours old and somebody should be told my libido hasn't been controlled. The only thing I've come to trust is an orgasmic rest of lust. So he's talking about how he was just thrown into this world and immediately became a sexual object. And so they're both talking about how this has not been so great for them. May have been great when it began, but it's not so great now. And then in the essay from Absolute Pleasures, the one I keep coming back to about lies, the author talks about like kind of Brad and Janet's journeys and how they are talking about it because they're both having big realizations in the aftermath of this and seem to be benefiting from their experience. So it takes a turn. And the essay calls the floor show the centerpiece of the film's moral universe. It is there on the stage within a stage where Brad and Janet are afforded the theatrical and emotional distance to tell the truth. While Columbia and Rocky lament the ways Frank has hurt them, Brad and Janet's verses are a striking departure. Her deception has been stripped away, and she sees only a boundless future in which she has power over her own body and desires. The essay talks about how Janet's departure is much easier to digest for her. They frame her as straight. I'm not sure that that's my read on her, but just for the sake of this, like talking about, like I said, not all these essays are in agreement, but I really liked this one. How because she is just having a sexual awakening. She's not like it's shaking her ground, but it's not shaking her like core fundamental understanding of who she is. And then when they talk about Brad, they talk about it and I think you'll find the musical elements of this interesting. I was writing this and I was like, "Oh, like you're going to get a kick out of this." It says, "Rose Tint My World is primarily in the key of D major, upbeat, danceable, triumphant. But Brad steps out and the fun glam rock feel of the song evaporates into the key of F sharp minor, a lamentation that points to the future. Even in this moment, he struggles to articulate the truth and begs his absent mother to take these feelings away from him if he promises never to indulge again. But he can't deny them, cannot pretend he does not like the way he looks, the way he feels, sexy, free, not even for a moment. The man who has spent the entire film trying his best to be a man is now dressed in the sequins and fishnets like a showgirl, and he loves it. Brad isn't evoking some playful subversion of gender, but rather is caught in the earthquake of discovering that he likes looking like this. And it's so much bigger than what Janet is going through. And some I've read some takes that it depict him just as gay. I've read some takes that depict him as like potentially like trans, like and whatever it is, I don't know because we don't really get into the future, but everything that Brad understands about himself has just totally disintegrated. And he's scared. He's like enjoying it, but he's scared and he's very unsure. And so they have really different vibes to their pieces of this song.
I love all of that, and I agree with the read on Brad. I love it. Like you see his leg start to rise and flex with the high heel, and it's a really quite poignant moment. And yeah, I mean, it is kind of interesting that Columbia, Rocky, and Brad are like, oh my God, I'm not having such a great time for one reason or another. And Jan is just like, oh, I feel great. Like she's just having the best time ever right now.
Right. I feel released, bad
Yes.
times deceased.
Bad times deceased. That is such a vibe of a line. Like I want to use that like more regularly.
Totally, and I also love the line at the end of Janet's, which is about Frank that says, "His lust is so sincere." And I think that's really true. His love is not sincere, his care is not sincere, but what is very sincere about him is his lust and sensuality.
Yeah.
And I love that that was what she needed. So for her, it's kind of okay that he sucks. Like, it's kind of okay that he is using people. Not that she's okay with it, but it's not affecting her because that's not what she needed. She had Brad. Like, she had someone who was pretty devoted to her until this. She needed someone lustful to, like, introduce her to lust and sex. And so I love that. His lust is so sincere.
That's a great line, which then kind of gets rhymed much later when they reprise it, which when she says, God bless Lily St. Cyr, who I didn't know who that was, finally looked into it, and who was dancer, I think, and stripper. Not sure exactly what, anyways, I'm not sure about more than that, but I just love that. Like, yeah, Janet is just truly like, God bless this night. Like, I'm having the best time ever.
Totally, totally. And so their lies to themselves from the beginning of the movie fall apart. And so the essay says if there is any single moral to be taken from Rocky Horror, it's that lies are fragile and there is no amount of subjectivity or self deluding that can keep reality at bay forever. It will come crashing down around you one way or another. It doesn't matter if you're ready for it, it doesn't matter if you're comfortable. The truth will always assert itself. You either stand to meet it or you let it crush you once and for all. And Janet is standing to meet it. Janet is like, here I am in all my sexual glory, and I am ready for this.
I love that. That's a beautiful quote. That's yeah, it's really meaningful. And then we get another iconic entrance. I mean, very few characters in movies get two iconic entrances, but Frankenfurter is one of them. So the backdrop to the stage opens, and it's basically this like tower, and it says an RKO radio picture. This brings us back to the first song of the film science fiction double feature.
Yeah, and this is like the thing that shows up at the beginning of the movie. This is like their title slide for RKO Productions, and I don't actually know, no, RKO Pictures, and it shows up at the beginning of a lot of the movies that are referenced. And so it just takes us back, yeah, to this whole movie being kind of a love letter to RKO on some level while also subverting all of the restrictions around those movies. And it's so good. And then
Sorry, can I interrupt?
yeah,
Can you even imagine what this movie would look like if the Hays Code was still in effect?
oh my God, I like
Like,
can't.
what would that have looked like?
I don't even know. I'm sure they would have come up with something, but it's like I can't even imagine.
It's like a fun thought experiment.
It is, it is. I'm curious, like, how because a lot of it is, like, not so it's, like, too explicit for Hays Code, but it's not as explicit as it would maybe be if it was made today.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about, but we get into the next portion of the song, and, we have Frank, like, talking about his own past a little bit, and he says, "Whatever happened to Fay Ray, that delicate satin draped frame, as it clung to her thigh, how I started to cry because I wanted to be dressed just the same." And so we see a hint that like Frank's desires were kept from him maybe at one point, and he's leaned a little too far in once he got to. And it seems like I think it raises the question of if he had been allowed to be himself earlier, would he have maybe been himself in a way that was so much less that was less reckless and less harmful to the people around him, and like the danger of keeping people from what they want.
Yeah, because then the thesis of this part of the song is essentially the title of the book, right? Give yourself over to absolute pleasure. I'll let you do the whole quote, but I think it's an important, the idea there is an important one to explore, which is I think also tied to truth in a lot of ways, truth and pleasure, of letting yourself unravel, open up, be true to who you are, explore what you want, explore your desires. And as we'll see later, then you get someone like Riff Raff being like, you've gone too far with that, to the point of which, yeah, like you said, like he's Frankenfurter is not taking into account other people's feelings anymore in his quest for absolute pleasure. But I mean, what a line, like what a thesis, what a statement to say. I think that's kind of what the movie's about in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think it's an invite and a cautionary tale at the same time. And the whole quote, and I did write this in my notes without listening and without looking because this just lives in my head so rent-free, is give yourself over to absolute pleasure. Swim the warm waters of sins of the flesh. Erotic nightmares beyond any measure and sensual daydreams to treasure forever. And like this is what you leave Rocky Horror with. Like right when you go, it's this like sexy, chaotic, crazy, fun time. And they are memories that you treasure forever. Like they are sensual daydreams that you treasure forever. Like so many of my fondest memories, particularly of the time in my life where I was going all the time, are so wrapped up in my experiences at these shows and like the dopamine rush that I get just hearing one of the songs and like I have these I have flashbacks, like the good kind of flashbacks where I'm just like back in it for a minute and like it's so profound and like I feel like that whole quote is so it and he ends it by saying can't you just see it, and it's like, we have just seen it. We just sat through this movie and this experience, and we have seen it now.
Not only that, but then the next big line that gets repeated a million times is don't dream it, be it. I mean, that's like another thing where it's like, don't let yourself just stay in your, I mean, this is like so relatable to me in so many ways. Like, don't stay in your head. Don't just imagine things. Go out and do those things. Go be the person you want to be. And again, the excess of it all is maybe like what the plot then goes into. But I think just as a general message, these lines, these parts of these songs are so much more profound and long lasting, like in our psyche. Like if you're watching and you're enjoying the movie, then I think these lines are going to mean a lot to you.
So, just jumping off of the "Don't Dream It, Be It," my next tattoo, hopefully my next one, like, if I stick to my plan, is I want to get, and it's very, like, cheesy and cliche and, like, probably 10,000,000 other people have it, and, like, that's why I want it. I will probably have tattoos that are very niche and, like, only random. Like, I have a tattoo of a quote on my thigh that, like, I've never run into someone who has recognized it, and, like, I love that, but this one is designed to be for the masses, I think, and I want it to be, like, on my outer butt cheek, like, where you'd see it if I was in a bathing suit, and I just want it to be the lips, and I want it to say, "Don't dream it, be it," in the Rocky Horror font, and I just, like, need that on my body, and in the book, like, one of the writers talked about how Rocky Horror is kind of like a secret handshake, where, like, if somebody, like, responds to a Rocky Horror thing, you just kinda know, like, either they're queer or they're just, like, your kinda weirdo and freak, like, and it just draws people in, so, like, that is I just, like, think I would tell you. I just thought I would tell you that.
Thank you for telling me that. I'm so happy you did. And I think that is gorgeous and amazing. And I can't wait for you to get that. And I love that. I mean, the lips and the font already just so perfect for a tattoo. And that's such a great line.
Totally.
So the next shot in the movie is really cool. They're all the characters are swimming in the pool, and the bottom of the pool is a painting of Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam, with like God and Adam like touching or almost touching fingers. It's like a really iconic painting. And Frankenfurter is also like swimming with this like I don't even know what to call it. It's like a circular
Like a
life
life
raft.
preserver,
Is it?
like the circular, like, before they had baby life jackets, thing.
Yeah, but it says it's SS Titanic on it. I just thought that's like a nice touch. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very random. Well, and I have a quote about this that I'll get more into it later, but I think crucially, Frankenfurter is positioned between God and man, like in the scene, in the shot. He is like
Oh
where
yeah.
their hands come together is where Frankenfurter is floating.
My brain is exploding.
Yeah, I actually hadn't noticed that. Like I said, there's a quote from the book that we'll get into about like what this means and how it relates to Frank. But I as soon as I read that, I was like, wow, okay, I see why this painting is here a little bit even more than I already did.
So many nice touches in this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're all kind of like swimming around, having some kind of like orgy, I want to say. I don't know. They're just swimming and having a good time. And then well then they go back on stage, they perform, they're singing, they're all wet. It's like really funny. I feel like they're probably exhausted at this point, but
Oh
they're
yeah.
still performing. That's show business.
I don't know if this is totally true, but like I did read somewhere that like the pool was not heated and they were told that the more frantic they were in the pool scene, like the quicker they would get the shot and the quicker they could get out of the cold water. So hilarious if
That's
true.
fantastic.
Maybe treat actors like a little bit better, but it is kind of funny like in retrospect.
Honestly, anytime I'm watching something and it's the actors have to get wet by like rain or swimming, I'm just like, I hope they got paid a lot for that day. Like they should get like a bonus for any time they have to perform while wet
Yeah,
because I can only imagine how awful that is.
for sure, especially if it's cold.
Okay, and then maybe my favorite, this might be my favorite part of the movie. I don't know. I've probably already said that 5 times, but Magenta and Riff Raff then burst into this theater and they're wearing like kind of like traditional sci-fi garb and like their hair is different now. Like Magenta has like it's like this big poofy updo and she has this like
She
sweet.
has like the Bride of Frankenstein hair. She has like the white
Yes,
stripe on the side and everything
that's
too.
what it is. Right. And then this is the, and I'm going to quote it, this is the part of this whole floor show extravaganza that gets stuck in my head after every time I watch this movie. This is the part that for days, including today, like days and days and days, I sing this exact paragraph, this exact verse that Riff Raff sings. And I don't know like why, it's just it's so it tickles something in my brain. I won't actually sing it, but he says, he bursts in with the like laser and everything, and he says, Frankenfurter, it's all over, your mission is a failure, your lifestyle's too extreme, I'm your new commander, you now are my prisoner, we return to Transylvania, prepare the transit beam. And yes, this was my version of I wrote this all without looking at the lyrics. And it's just so, I think it's just because like also the way that he's singing it is very declamatory and like it's not very rhythmic, it's very like even in how he says everything, so it's really easy to like have it, I don't know, I feel like it's just easy to get stuck in my head.
For sure. And it's such a good moment. And, you know, your lifestyle's too extreme. It makes you wonder where the line is for them. And they've never done this before, you know, this is just happening today.
Okay, but also, and then also the fact that Magenta and Riff Raff are siblings, and we find that out after they've already, I think at some point they kiss or they like are
They're
very
very weirdly affectionate. Yeah, it's a little it's definitely
yes,
something.
right? And I'm like, okay, that's also maybe a little extreme. But again, as you've mentioned a few times, these people are all aliens, so
Yes.
you know.
Yes. But yeah, it does raise the question, I guess, of like, was it Rocky that like tipped the scales? Was it what went on with Brad and Janet? Like, it's just like, where did this become too extreme? Because they do clearly seem willing to indulge like a level of hedonism that is not typical for American Earthlings. So, yeah, I'm so curious. I kind of love that it doesn't answer. Like, I think it would be over explaining if it answered, but it's just an interesting thing to think about. What level of hedonism is normal and expected and okay, and where does the line get crossed?
Yeah, for sure. And then the next song, though I think we had already had some bits of this song earlier on. I always forget the order of the floor show, but the next song is like maybe the most serious one out of the whole musical. Would you agree? Like I think it's the most profound and like you can actually take it seriously because this whole movie, this whole musical barely has 1 second of actual seriousness. Like it's all camp, it's all melodramatic, over the top, and it has to be that. Like it that's what Rocky Horror is, and it just wouldn't work any other way. Like it's not too, anyways. But then you get to this song where Frankenfurter's like, oh, okay, we're gonna go back home to Transylvania, and I'll let you explain the song. But I think it can be taken seriously, and it can be taken kind of outside of the context of the musical a little bit, as just this really meaningful song.
I totally agree that this is the most serious song in the movie. This is my funeral song, like, this is my death plan. So if anyone was wondering if anyone was wondering, I wanna be cremated, and I want my ashes to be spread over sunset cliffs, and, I mean, who knows, I could change my mind, but I've wanted this for, like, a few years. Like, this has been, like, several years of me thinking this, and I want this to be the song that they play while they, like, throw my ashes.
I really love that. That is beautiful.
I love this song so much, and I think that there's, like, hints, and I think that some of this is the differences between Frankenfurter and Magenta and Riff Raff, that, like, Frankenfurter probably did not actually fit in very well on his home planet, and I think that this song makes me feel that way because, like, I want to come again and stay, smile, and that will mean I may. Like, he needs permission to, like, exist in his home, and, like, I've seen blue skies through the tears in my eyes, and I realize I'm going home. Like, it seems like he feels like he's been sent out, right? And even the second verse, everywhere it's been the same, feeling like I'm outside in the rain. Like, it's the same thing over and over, no matter where he is, it seems that he is too much. There's a version of Frankenfurter that's too much for his excesses and his hedonism, but I think he's really too much for his carelessness and his disregard for other people, aliens, whatever. And I think that's why it's the same thing about, like, where's the line for Riff Raff and Magenta, because it's like you kind of wonder, like, has he always been this way? Has he always felt like an outsider? Where did that outsiderness turn into, like, a callousness for him? Which I think is something that that does happen to people, right? The more that we are disparaged or, like, cast aside, we can grow really bitter, and we can grow to not really give a shit about how other people feel if we have felt like people don't care about how we feel. And so this song just gives us such an insight into Frankenfurter, both as potentially a victim in the past, but the type of perpetrator that Frankenfurter has become, and that it comes from this desire to feel home, to feel belonging, that has eluded him, both at his home planet and now on Earth in his castle.
I love that reading on it so much. I really do think it's such a genuinely profound song. And I think the other thing I love about it is that so they're in this part of the castle that's a theater with an actual stage and pool, because why not? But it's empty apart from the main characters. But when he's starting to sing this song, I'm Going Home, he starts imagining the theater full of people, and like he's literally performing for people. And I think that's another part of Frankenfurter, is like he's a born performer. Everything is theatrical to him. Everything is heightened to him. I characters like that are so fun. But when everything is so heightened and everything feels like a performance, what you're masking is vulnerability, and he's showing this vulnerability here. And he really does cry, and he has this moment where he like puts his fists to his eyes and kind of drags them down, and so his makeup runs down his face. I always like that shot.
Yeah, because that is like taking off the mask, right? The makeup kind of is the mask. And I think, like, in this imaginary audience, you just see his desire to be loved and his total inability to, like, know how to achieve that goal, but it's there. It's there. He wants to, and maybe the desire to be loved somewhere along the way got, like, warped into a desire to be adored and to be worshiped. right? Because his view of what love means has become so skewed by his own experiences, both probably as feeling like an outsider and then in what he has done to other people, that it's turned into something else. And I think we see that in this imagined audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. The next sequence is basically Riff Raff being like, "Oh, LOL, you're not coming with us." Like, don't know what you were thinking, but actually, we're gonna kill you now.
Right. We refers only to Magenta and myself.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny because it's almost kind of just like a record scratch where it's like Frankenfurter just had it's such a beautiful song crying about like, oh, you know what? Fine. Like I'll give in to you, Riff Raff. Like I'll come with you. Let's go home. Like you said. And then Riff Raff is like, no, not you. I'm about to kill you actually. There's a really interesting line that Dr. Scott says because basically he's like agreeing with Riff Raff. He's like, yes, like I'm fine with all of this happening. And he says specifically, society must be protected. And I think that's such an important line because it kind of reveals so much about, again, about queerness and like how it's viewed and how these like straight laced people, even like a scientist who you wish would inherently be more open minded, even those kinds of people can be very, very close minded about just like the different ways you're allowed to be a human. And he's like, yeah, this, I mean, he doesn't elaborate. So protected from what? Is it, again, is it that Frankenfurter has killed people? Is it that Frankenfurter is from another planet and like he doesn't like aliens? Is it that Frankenfurter is some kind of queer? Like he doesn't specify. It's probably an amalgamation of everything that Frankenfurter is. Um, but yeah, I'm curious on your take on that line because I think it's really important.
Yeah, I go back and forth because I think there is that element of like white cis hetero patriarchal society and like the need to protect that society from queerness. But I think society needs to be protected from people like Frank. Like he's not good. He's not good just because he's queer. And I think this is the thing for me. I think that Frank is a monster, unfortunately. Maybe there's a lot of layers to that and like it's complex how he got there, but Frank is willing to dispose of people quite literally for shits and giggles. And that's not queerness. That's not, you know what I mean? Like he happens to also be queer, but like let queer people be evil and fucked up also. You know what I mean? I don't actually need them to all be pure of heart and like deserving of all these things and whatever. And I'm not in favor of the death penalty. I'm not even in favor of prisons, but just like in this universe, I don't know that he should die even in the context of this movie, but I do think society needs to be protected from him because he is willing to do whatever the fuck he wants no matter who he hurts. And so I don't know what Dr. Scott means, and I don't know if I agree with Dr. Scott in his own meaning because I don't know what he means. But I do think that Frank is a walking hurricane. You know what I mean? Who just like swallows everything up and throws it back out and it's all fucked up afterwards. And like, you know, it seems like Brad and Janet are the exception to that. They are not like Brad and Janet having this like enlightenment does not seem to be the rule. It seems to be the exception. Everyone else is dead or miserable and scared. And so I don't know, you know, I don't know.
No, I love that. I really appreciate that. I that obviously makes like so much sense. Like he literally just yeah, killed and ate Eddie at the very least. Like that's just one person that he has harmed in that way. And he's just an anti-hero. Like he's the main character of the movie and you want to like love him and you know, if I was in the musical theater field, I don't know how this would even happen, but I just mean like I can imagine that everyone would want to play Frankenfurter. Like that's the role you want to play if you're going to be in Rocky Horror. That's the funnest role. That's the campiest role. That's like you're the main character. And yet he's not really a protagonist as such, right? He's just like he does really bad things. And I mean, it's worth pointing out also that like he's not the only one to die, because Riff Raff also kills Columbia, and then it takes a while, but he eventually kills Rocky. And actually, there's this really nice shot of Rocky being super distraught over Frankenfurter's death, and he hoists him on his back and climbs up the RKO tower backdrop. And Riff Raff is like shooting the laser beam, and I guess because Rocky is so muscled and like a Frankenstein of sorts, like he's hard to kill. And finally, he falls backwards with Frankenfurter on his back into the pool. It's a really, really cool shot. Um, so in that sense, it's not like Frankenfurter is the only one to be killed by Riff Raff at the end.
Yeah, and I think that scene is, like, so nice because I think it's Rocky's conflict. Rocky isn't very articulate, right? He has his song, and that's about all we really hear from him out loud. But I think that this speaks to the complexity, right? Like, this is still his creator, and so there is still that affection there, and he does seem really distressed while this is happening, and then they both die, and they're shot by the antimatter beam, which is another favorite callback, is he's like, "But a beam of pure antimatter," and then everyone goes, "Does that mean it doesn't matter?" And then after he shoots Columbia, people are like, "Oh shit, it works."
Oh, that's
Which, like,
good.
adds so much levity to such an intense moment, but yeah, I mean, I think anti-hero is the exact category that Frank slots into, and even some of these quotes from the book kind of touch on that. Like, there's Tanya Marquardt, I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, I'm really doing my best, wrote in their essay, "Frankenfurter is the antagonist that you love to hate but love to love, an embodiment of taboo in all its form, fucking, fighting, feeding, and fleeing. He wants what he wants when he wants it. His alien ways means he sees humans as toys, things to get off on, experiment on, look down on. When his toys have emotions, and worse still, boundaries, we begin to see Frankenfurter's ultimate flaw. He can't bear rejection. And when met with a no, his reactions range from petulant to psychotic, sexually assaultive to sociopathic, right? So we do love him. We love to love him. We love his entrances. We love his glamour. We love his attitude and the sensuality that he exudes. But he doesn't care about anyone. He doesn't care about anything but himself. This quote posits, right, that it's because he's an alien, but I don't know if that's why. Like, I think that's an interesting take. Like I said, this book is full of essays that don't agree with each other. So, like, that's just one version of it. And maybe it's because he's an alien, and maybe it's just how he is because he's Frank. Maybe it's actually that simple too, but either way, he's like a petulant child, but he's wrapped in sex and glitter and glamour and like just oozes charisma. And it's a really interesting combination of things to exist in a single character. I don't know. It's like hard to it's like hard to even explain Frank.
Oh God, yeah. But I like that read on it. I think I'd agree. And he like, so I just characterized him as the main character of this musical, but like I think in his brain, like as a character, like he sees himself as the main character, right? Like people talk about that nowadays as like almost like a slang term or whatever. Like he literally thinks he's the main attraction in any room he walks into. And it is in some ways it's kind of true because he's so like larger than life and extroverted and everything. But like the quote says, like the second that someone is defiant towards him in some way, it's like, wait, what? Like I'm the most important person here. How can you not realize that?
Totally. Main character syndrome, big time.
Yeah.
And I think, like, as we're talking about this, I'm really thinking too about how I'm still stuck on the like protect from society thing and like how that makes sense for Frank. And like I think this is maybe a hot take. This is like maybe like a warm take because it's not that crazy, but it's like a warm take. I think that Frank being punished, I'm not gonna say getting killed because like I just don't really like that just isn't really my vibe. But I think Frank having some level of accountability for his actions is as important as Frank being as audaciously sexual and gender fucky and all of these other things for the movie and like for what we learn from the movie because we should be ourselves and we should be free, but that also requires us to respect the freedom of others and respect their right to like be themselves and live how they want to live, and that we can't impose, right? That's where we become monsters, is when we start to impose. And so one of the essays by Holly Joy Wortman says the crime for which Frank is ultimately punished is allowing his excessive desires to hurt other people. Frank's downfall extends beyond parties and indulgence. Instead, the film serves as a cautionary tale about how Frankenfurter discards and mistreats those around him in his pursuit of hedonism. And then they go on to say Frank gets close to creating a world in his image and forcing that on others. He and his followers dive into a pool. This is the thing about the painting. He and his followers dive into the pool where he floats above a representation of the painting, The Creation of Adam. A wide zoom out reveals Frank between the outstretched hands of Adam and his creator. Just as Frank positioned himself in our human world as an all powerful giver and taker of life through Rocky and Eddie, in these acts, Frank committed a cardinal sin to play at being God. So Frank is punished. Right. So he is overstepping. He's taking it too far. It's not that he's taking it too far because of how queer he is. It's not taking it too far because of how sexual he is. He's taking it too far because he has such an inflated sense of power and authority that he thinks that just because he didn't want to be like everyone else, that everyone has to be like him. And that's also a problem. But I really like one of the things that this essay ended on, and it says, this community taught me that I can be whoever I want as long as I am kind. And I think that like that message only comes through if Frank is somehow held accountable, right? It's how do we take the unabashed queerness and say that's actually not what the problem was. The problem was the blatant disregard for the humanity of others. And so how do we learn the lessons we need to learn from Frankenfurter, both in how to be ourselves and how to be bold and how to like show up and make the whole room look at you if that's what you want, but also to never forget that everyone else really does matter just as much as we do.
Really love that. Yeah, that's so well said. I think like for me like the culture of Rocky Horror is about queerness and all the things we've been talking about, all the themes we've been talking about and the pleasure and even excess of it all. But I think then like with Frankenfurter's death and punishment, however you want to call it, I think that's more about like the actual plot, right? And the fact that it's a take on classic science fiction movies and he's kind of a villain and you kill the villain. And like so to me it's not like you're saying, it's not about killing him because he's queer. Like I've never read it that way anyways. It's like, yeah, he's done some bad things and like in some way he has to pay, so he gets this laser beam thrown at him, whatever the fuck it is. And it's not even like, I don't know why I process it this way. Like I don't process it as something like super sad. I think it's also because it just goes by so quick. But it's just such a campy and over the top movie anyways, and the laser beams, I think you'd mentioned this earlier on, are like, you know, it's like 1970s special effects. Like I love it.
And not even like the best version of those. Like it's like the worst version of those.
Even the sound effects are really like silly.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like, okay, well, the movie has to end in some way, shape, or form. And I think
Yeah.
it would have been weird to have it end with Frankenfurter being like, all right, well, I'm gonna sing my song. I'm sad, but let's all go home, and then they just go back to their planet. Like, no, that's not how like that's not how I envision old school science fiction movies to end. So I think it's just that too. It's like kind of just a plot thing, really.
Right. Because the basic plot is just standard. It's very standard. And I don't mean that in a negative. I think like the joy of it is that it takes this very standard plot and like does so much with it. So it's so much fun. And like the thing is, like I said at the beginning, like the context of this is the community and like the world built around Rocky Horror and not just the movie itself anymore. Like I wasn't there. So like I can't divorce my knowledge and experiences of the community from just the movie strictly in its own thing. Like even the consent stuff, I think like part of why I have trouble being bothered by it, I think is one, the read that I gave earlier, but I think two is because I have never seen such a consent positive space as Rocky Horror. Like, you get there and they lay out all the rules about touching, and they say, like, the audience members might touch you, but if you don't want them to, mostly they, they, if you don't want them to, they won't. You cannot touch them unless they invite you to. Like, it's all very strict. And even the sacrifices thing, like, ultimately, I've never seen someone, like, get dragged up as a virgin. I do think people should do it. Like, I think if you're gonna go, even if you're, like, nervous, uncomfortable, if you're a certain level of uncomfortable, obviously don't do it. But I think if you're, like, uncomfortable just in, like, the kind of normal way, I think it's worth doing. It's very fun. It'll be a fond memory for, like, the rest of your life. But I've never seen someone get, like, dragged up there. You know what I mean? Like, I've never seen someone really get pushed beyond, like, a little nudge of, like, "Hey, it's a little anxiety provoking to be on stage, but, like, get up there, it'll be fun." And it's all very encouraging and safe, and, like, I think that this is a really vulnerable space for young queer people, and I do think that that can be kind of fraught. Like, that's your exposure to, like, queer elders, and, like, some of whom are lovely and will, like, invite you and teach you and do all of these things that make your life better, and, like, some of whom are not gonna be great because we're just people also, and so it's very fraught, but I my experiences with it, which again are just mine, have all felt so safe that, like, I can't imagine reading too heavily into the consent stuff in a space where I feel like no one would ever expect me to do something I was not comfortable with.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so powerful. And it's not to like, I don't think either of us thinks that queer spaces are inherently perfect and angelic. And like, again, like you just said, we're all just people too. Like, it's not to put being queer or queer people on a pedestal at all. But I do think like if we're talking specifically about Rocky Horror, there is some kind of magic to it where I think it comes back to your point early on in our discussion of like when you see those red lips at the opening of the movie, if you if it grabs you and you're into that, you're then going to be into the whole movie. And if you're into the whole movie, like it makes you a cool person. Like, you know what I mean? Like
I
like
agree.
it
I totally agree.
like it necessitates like it doesn't. You don't have to be queer, obviously, to connect with this movie. But at the same time, I don't think it speaks to. I don't think it's for hetero people. I do not think this movie is for the like cis het.
Unless they're super weird.
Sure, yeah.
In the book, I'm gonna not say the quote totally accurately, but in the book, a couple of the essays mention the bell hooks definition of queer. That's like queerness not as about who you're sleeping with, but is about being at odds with the world around you. That's not. It's like along those lines, and that's who Rocky Horror is for. Like, it's like you may be queer in the literal sense and you may not be, but, like, there's something about the way you exist in the world. I think, like, a lot of neurodivergent people probably even would fit into here, right? But, like, there's something about the way you move through the world that has been deemed unacceptable, and, like, here is a space where you could just do that and, like, it's fine.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Like this is weird. Like I come back to the word campy too, or just camp. Like this is also kind of like the definition of camp, and like I love the like glam rock of it all, and like just the mix of styles and the genres of music. It's just such a Frankenstein's monster of a musical, and that's like by and for weird people. And I I am someone that like I this is not to go on too long of a tangent, but like I've always been viscerally aware that a lot of people when they interact with me probably think I'm weird in some way. Um and I'm just like very hyper aware of that. And so then when I turn to media like this, specifically film and television, a movie like Rocky Horror is just like, yeah, like this is for me. Like this is I don't have to even identify with any specific one character in this movie. It's just like this type of artistic moment is inclusive of me. And that just feels really good. And that's really special. And so it can be hard to take things at face value when you watch something like this because is that's almost like not the point. Like, it's not to say that we can't critique things in it. And I love how what you said throughout our discussion of like, if you feel this way about this scene, you're right. Like, it's anyone can feel anything they want about this movie, but I think it's before we started recording, I think I had said something along the lines of like, this is mostly like a vibes based movie. Like, I can't really like, there's a plot, but like, is there? And also like, sure, things happen, but do they? Like, it's vibes, it's an atmosphere, it's a thing, like it's bigger than itself. And so I don't, it's hard to fit certain scenes or what happens in the movie into like neat boxes, even though I came into our discussion maybe doing that in my own brain, and I'm happy that I will leave it not doing that anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense. There is there's a desire to put things into boxes, right? There's like a human desire. But I think half of queerness is like rejecting the boxes, right? So we might as well reject them for the movie too. But okay, I have a question based on the way our notes were formatted. Did you watch a version that has superheroes at the end?
I can't remember. I do. Is it like just the final song or the final part of the film? I think so.
It's the final song, but it's a song. It's not just the criminologist outro.
Yeah, so then probably not, but I feel like I must have heard it. Like, it's on the soundtrack.
Okay, wait, I feel like can I ask you to watch it now and tell me what you
Oh
think?
yeah.
Okay.
Unless I just never stick around long enough to get to get to it, which would be
I
bad.
think that it's like an American version and a UK version or something. There is like a version that has it and a version that doesn't. So it's
Okay.
very like within
Oh,
possibility that you have seen one that does not have it.
this is so funny. I'm pretty sure I have seen this, but not in the version that's on Disney Plus.
Okay.
So I must have, like, I know the song. That's a funny thing. So I don't know. Sorry, I know I'm talking while it's playing, but like I absolutely know this song. So I wonder if they've just like, oh, that's okay. Sorry, I know I'm like
No, it's
the
okay.
stream
It's
of
okay. I just
consciousness.
wanted to make sure you
I
had
think,
seen it.
yeah. Because okay, I feel like this is like almost like a Mandela effect or something. I don't know. Something weird has happened where maybe like the version I used to watch did contain this, but then in the last few years, whatever I've been watching does
Yeah,
not.
I will say that when I searched on Google superheroes Rocky Horror, one of the first thing that comes up is Reddit r/Rocky Horror. Why was superheroes cut on Disney Plus? So,
Okay,
so that is the
perfect.
version without it. So we can confirm that the streaming version on Disney Plus does not have it.
That's also probably why I felt like I think I put in my notes or I said earlier, I was like, the movie just kind of ends. But I knew in my head, I was like, why? It feels like it doesn't. And it's because, yeah, okay, see, I'm seeing Dr. Scott. Of course, I've totally seen this. Oh my God, Disney. What a fuck, Jesus.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, like I don't
That's so
know. That's
annoying.
so weird to me. But I just wanted to make sure that you had seen it, and if not, I wanted to like make sure you see it now. So
Yeah, it's almost done. Yeah, and then it's like spinning,
yeah,
and then the globe, of
yeah,
course.
and then the criminologist.
Wow. Oh my God, I'm so happy you brought this up because it was like a locked away memory.
Yeah.
Okay, that's so much better of an ending than them just it's just like a shot of them on the floor for 1 second and then the movie's done.
Yeah.
That's weird. Okay.
Yeah. So in superheroes, yeah, it's like Brad and Janet still in their like showgirly outfits, crawling around and singing. And Dr. Scott is like on the ground and his wheelchair is broken. And then it like spins out to the criminologist who does the little outro. So what do you think is next for them? What do you think like okay, I mean, to be fair, there's a sequel. I take it as its own separate thing. It's kind of fun. I actually don't dislike it, but I don't really take it as like Rocky Horror canon. I kind of just like take it as its own thing. It's called
What is
it's
that?
called Shock Treatment. I don't even want to get into the plot. I should rewatch it soon. I don't really want to get all the way into the plot, but it is about Brad and Janet. It's not the same actors, and it's fun. I actually like I found it fun. I've only seen it once. I found it very fun. Like I said, I don't really take it as Rocky Horror canon, but it does exist. So if I'm asking you what I think comes next, I feel like I should at least acknowledge that like someone did make a what comes next. But what do you think comes next?
First of all, I think they each sleep for like 12 hours straight.
Yes,
Like
I
they
think that that probably is true.
I think really it's that they probably for a while they won't be able to look at each other in the eye, like in the sense that they'll just be like, did that really happen to us, and what does it mean for us? I would imagine they don't get married. I don't know. It could be one of those experiences where you then, well, especially because now the characters, the people they've met, are no longer on this planet anyway. So they go back to their lives because they have to. It could be either way. It could be that that brings Brad and Janet closer together and they're like, well, now we're just really developed people, but let's still be together and we're just going to have this really cool new life as our new selves. But I'd probably lean more towards them being like, all right, that was kind of crazy. See ya. Like, and just being
Yeah.
like, go on in their separate ways, you know?
Yeah. I think for a long time, I felt like they would still end up together, not even so much in this, like, nice way that you presented it as an option, but more in the sense of, like, there's no one else on this earth who has, like, witnessed this, and so I need to keep this person around just, like, for my sanity almost. And I know some people, yeah, think that it's like their lives are going to be shaken up and like maybe reshaped for the better after they leave. One of the essays takes a very bleak vision of the ending, and I hate to say that I do think it resonates with me and I do think it seems accurate. Again, there's no right read on this, but it was just like I read this and was like, "Oh, I that feels true in my heart." Grace Lavery wrote, "This is not a coming out story for good and for ill. At the end, Brad and Janet are left to rebuild somehow the reductively ludicrous heterosexual life they had set out upon before the transvestite and his cohort got their mitts all over the lovers." That is that, like, do they just go back and like try to pretend that this didn't happen and like shut themselves back away into this normal life that they had set out upon? But I keep coming back to that essay about the lies, and how that was all a lie, and, like, do they go back to the lie? And I don't know. I don't I keep going back and forth, but it's just, like, an interesting definitely an interesting thing to think about.
Oh, absolutely. I love that as you framing it as do they go back to the lie? Because that's what it is. And like, oh, God, I feel like I'm like on my soapbox a lot right now. But I do think that heteronormativity specifically, not heterosexuality, but like heteronormativity as a thing, to me, it just like looks one way. You're supposed to be one type of person in that framework. And no human being is just one thing, or no human being feels right in their body when they're trying to fit into a box, right? The levels of distress that people experience can vary, but we know we're born with that sense of like knowing whether the conformity we're experiencing feels right or not. Anyways,
Yeah.
what my related thought there is that queerness is the opposite of that. It's this expansiveness, it's this openness. And it doesn't mean that every human being needs to say they're queer or be queer, or like I also like I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care who, like what label you want to use. Like it's not about that, but just to like I just love I'm just trying to I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I think there's so many people who do go back to the lie after they've had an experience like this. I don't know what kind of similar experience a human would have, but anyways, like an experience where you're shown um a new reality. I think actually Janet uses the word reality in the floor show at some point. You're shown a way of being that's different and possible, and you're like, oh wait, what? Like I could be this way, like I could live like this, but then for whatever reason you're brought back quote unquote down to earth, and in a lot of ways it's easier to conform. And yeah, I can totally imagine Brad and Janet being like, okay, let's try and even forget, actually like completely forget that that happened. We know what path we're on. This was only one night. It's not like it was 5 months of our time. Like it was just this one night. Crazy things happened. Let's get back on track. But like you brought up, like that will not feel right to them no matter what.
Even thinking about the boxes and like you said, like the level of like distress someone feels inside a box will vary. And I think the thing is, I think there are some people who don't feel distressed because they happen to be the shape of the box. And they misinterpret that as thinking the box is safe and good. Like for example, like I like school. Like I like school type of learning. I learn well in like classrooms, textbooks, lectures. And like I didn't realize until I was an adult like how problematic that structure was because it was fine for me. Like I was like this is great. Like I'm learning. And I think, like, I could have gone my whole life being like, "Well, that's a good box." You know what I mean? But, like, I think there was, like, a point where I was like, "Oh, I just, like, happen to be shaped like that." And, like, that's not by my own doing, and that's not by the box's doing. I just, like, happen to be that type of person. And I gotta, like, know for real that that doesn't say anything about the box, actually. That doesn't make the box good. It just makes me box shaped. It's not something that we can, like, carry through to mean anything, and I think that's the thing, right? Like, I think that the people who do happen to be shaped the right way, the right, quote, like, major air quotes on right, but who happen to be shaped in this heteronormative shape, some of them do feel distress even if they're still straight, even if they're still cis, just because it is such a narrow box, but I also think that there are people who are box shaped who are loud and like think that the box is fine because the box never hurt them, you know, but the box hurts a lot of people. And I think most boxes hurt a lot of people.
Oh my god, I love how you put that. That makes so much sense. Being box shaped. Like, I just never thought of it that way, and that's so wise. Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think Brad and Janet are not going to feel. If they felt box shaped before, they certainly will not feel it anymore, and I wish them the best.
Yeah, I highly doubt that they had felt box shaped prior to this, but
Yeah.
yeah, so that's I mean, that's the movie. We'll obviously keep talking about it, but like that's the movie. We have like now encapsulated the movie as best as we can. Please watch. Like if you're listening to this and you haven't seen Rocky Horror, like actually you're doing things wrong with your life. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but like please go watch it. Like indulge yourself. Be aware of the consent things. I know that can be triggering for people. You can skip that scene if you really feel like you need to. Maybe us talking about it will have diluted some of that, but if not, you know, whatever. But if you've never seen it, I really do implore you to like give it a chance.
Especially through the lens of like I think it is kind of fascinating for a grown adult to watch it in 2025. Like obviously if you're a young person, like you can't watch it before now, but like if you somehow could have watched it earlier in life and just haven't yet, I think that is like so interesting because it is so of its time. Like if Richard O'Brien was younger and came up with the idea today, that's not going to look like what it is. So it is a product of its time, but I think in one of the best ways. Like there's so many movies that you look at it, like old movies you look at and you go like, oh God, we don't need this. It's done. Leave it behind. You can remake it better. Like there's a lot of movies like that. And this one's just not like that.
No, this one's not. We need this one. And I don't feel that way about very many things. Like I don't really like care about Harry Potter anymore. Like I know that that's really deep for some people. I know I even know a lot of trans people that like runs too deep for it to let go of, and like that's your journey to walk. But like we need Rocky Horror. I just really, I really think we do. We need the movie and we need the community. Like I really, and a lot of the essays in this book were written by really young people, like our age-ish and younger, and that was so reassuring to me because I do think that I have some level of fear that it will run its course in my lifetime, and I just don't want that to happen. I just don't want that to happen. So, it was really nice to see people even younger than I am who are doing shadow casts, who care enough to write an essay, like, who care enough to write an essay about it. You know what I mean? Like, that was so comforting to me. But I think now that we've, like, gotten through the movie and all the things and, like, while we're talking about, like, these elements that are maybe a little bit less that haven't aged as well and like that are more controversial. I know you found an article about like transphobia and Rocky Horror. So do you want to talk a little bit about the article and just like what your own thoughts were based on the article, and yeah, like just kind of start unpacking that to the best that you and I can.
When I was doing my research, this was the only article that I'd come across that I remembered that talked about Rocky Horror in recent years. I think this came out last year. It's an article on them. The I don't know if you'd call it a publication. The title is "Yes, Rocky Horror is transphobic. Why do we still like it so much?" And it includes a discussion between Fran Tirado and Samantha Allen. And I just think it's really interesting. There are some like differing views, or there's a lot of holding space. Yes, Wicked is coming up soon, so sorry I had to say that at some point. But they really do like hold space for the nuances of this movie. I don't think anyone could realistically disagree that this movie is nuanced. Like it is really complex in a lot of ways. One quote I do really like is the following. Its unambiguous critique of heteronormativity was weird even for the 70s, and likely part of the reason its initial reviews were so unfavorable. Audiences weren't prepared to see themselves humiliated, to be prodded at and shoved into an uncomfortable world of freakdom. I actually really like that word freakdom. I think that that is a really fun word uh, to use. And then in terms of the Frankenfurter of it all, so we get another quote. Furter is a self-identified sweet transvestite and sings a whole song about it. But beyond the character's gender nonconformity, the movie is also incredibly anarchist and quite bisexual too. Frankenfurter employs, yes, problematic sexual usurpation. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that word. There's an inexplicable meatloaf cameo, and the power of song ultimately helps Brad and Janet shed their normcore sensibilities before the mansion launches off the earth like a rocket back into space. I think it's just kind of the article just kind of details like when you're especially when you're looking at it from a like today's lens, a modern lens, of course you can find like problematic aspects of how, and I mean we've already discussed this, but like how it depicts the trans umbrella. But I think what I like about it, I mean, there's so many words here, there's so many terms that I appreciate. The gender nonconformity, the anarchism. I think that's a huge part of this. Like, oh, I think it's like such a rich undercurrent of this movie is just like fuck mainstream culture, like fuck traditional American values, like fuck that shit. Like we don't need it. It holds people back. It ruins the planet. Like everyone's depressed. Like so I love the use of the word anarchism. Anyways, I think the article is worth reading because it's a really nice discussion. And then the one of the final lines, or maybe the final line of the article says, I would issue a plea to anyone looking to problematize Rocky Horror or any cultural object really. Dissect it, don't discard it. And sometimes I'm a bit like I need to take that advice. Sometimes there are things I watch where I'm just like, this is so problematic. I cannot stand behind this. Why would anyone watch this? And I mean, like, honestly, there are things that, like, I just genuinely think people shouldn't watch, or, like, is just really just, yeah, like, capital B bad. But I think I just need to do that a bit less. And I think a movie like Rocky Horror is a great, like, if someone hasn't watched it, I think it's a great example of, like, watching it knowing it was in the 70s, like, trying to put it in context and not throwing it away because it's not perfect and because it wasn't made with a 2025 sensibility.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the other quotes that you have in the notes from this article gets to something I kind of talked about earlier that says queer characters should be allowed to do bad and even terrible things. Stories aren't interesting if everyone is operating with the same set of ethical rules. Movies don't need to be morality tales. And I it's so funny because I think that is so true, but then at the end I'm like, this is a morality tale for these exact reasons. And coming back to the anarchy of it all, I think one of the moral lessons here is that anarchy without compassion is not really better than what we have right now, actually. And it's just fun. It's just funny. Like I totally agree that like queer characters should just be allowed to be terrible and evil and horrible and assholes. But it's funny that they're like, movies don't need to be morality tales, when to me, there's so much morality tale in this movie.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
And I did just take like a couple of quotes about just watching Rocky Horror and people's perception of it. There's just two that really stuck out to me that didn't have a better place to go, but I really wanted to include from the essay collection. One is Margot Atwell saying, "Watching Rocky Horror for the first time felt like being Dorothy landing in Oz, stepping out of a home rendered in black and white into a technicolor wonderland. Rocky Horror wasn't gay, it was queer. It was weird and horrifying and violent and sexy and fun, full of campy winks and nods, and the total opposite of everything that heterosexual, cisgender, monogamous, patriarchal society demanded and enforced."
I'm sitting here like clapping. Like I'm like, yes, that's exactly fucking it. Like that's it. Like to me, I love that they say like Rocky Horror wasn't gay, it was queer. Like to me, that's a pretty huge distinction. And there's so much intersection, obviously. It's just the more I think about queerness, the more expansive it becomes to me. Almost as like a way of life, or it's so much bigger. Like, not to get too sidetracked, but like it's been years now that I'm like really over the phrase like love is love, or like let people love who they want. I'm like, I like, yes, but also we can't stop there. It's not just that. It's not like it's not about saying like, oh my god, okay, I'm gay and now I'm gonna do everything that heteronormative culture tells me I should do. I'm just going to do it as a gay person. Like that to me is not queerness. It's so different to that. Anyways, I'm trying not to devolve into like uh, do you know what I mean?
No, I totally know what you mean, and I'm here for the sidetrack even, honestly, and I mean, I think a lot about the idea of, like, queer as a verb, like, queering your own life, and I think that's kind of, like, what you're getting at. It's not love who you love, it's, like, let people be who and how they are, and that might look like a lot of things, and I think it's an example of how, like, the more we make things welcoming for trans people, for example, like, the better off we really all are, and, like, it just ripples out from whatever group needs the acceptance into acceptance for everybody more than there is, and I think that this has a lot of that in it. I mean, this queers the movie experience, right? Like, it's like the movie-going experience has been queered by Rocky Horror in a way that feels really profound. One of the other quotes from the book that I really liked about the movie and the experience of seeing the movie is, by Birch Rosen, and it says, "It was sexy, resplendently alive, and old enough to connect me to a queer legacy while still feeling utterly novel in its weirdness." And I think that's why it's so timeless, and I think that's why it's, like, that's why all of these things we're saying. That's why we're saying them, because it does all of these things that seem so at odds with each other almost. Like, how can it connect me to, like, queer legacy, but also give me thoughts about the queer future? And, like, how does it relate to where we are today and where we might, like, it's just so, and it still surprises me. I mean, not I've seen it 10 million times, but it's, like, still surprising to people when they see it the first time, even though it's so ubiquitous, even though queerness is more in the culture now, like, it still has surprises in store for you through all of it, and it's just so good, it's just so fun.
It really is. And then one of the other things we've already touched on a little bit, but I think it's still worth diving deeper into, is the creator Richard O'Brien and his views, and also like how his views have changed over the years, but kind of like not really. But what I find fascinating, so in 2009, this is according to Wikipedia, but it was sourced. But anyways, he described himself as trans. Specifically, he said in between male and female. He just didn't specify the term non-binary. So I found that like super interesting. Then, as you had mentioned earlier, by 2017, he starts saying things like trans women are not real women. But he's like, it's so frustrating. And then in 2020, he stated, just, I don't even know if I want to quote this. It's kind of just fucked up things, telling people like telling trans people that they can't become quote unquote a natural woman. Like it's really really upsetting to me. It's very frustrating, and it always sucks when the creator of a piece of media that is so beloved um, has views that are so disparaging or harmful. And I don't know why he can't take the beauty of like recognizing that perhaps he identifies with the non-binary label. Like, why does that mean that you have to close your doors and like close ranks and tell trans women specifically that they're not real? But like, what, like, who, like, it's just so frustratingly the same rhetoric as J.K. Rowling, and like, it just like makes me super sad. But you had some really interesting thoughts or quotes on this.
Yeah, I want to preface all of this with saying that like everything that he has said has been blatantly transphobic. So this is not to say that he is not transphobic. This is not a defense. This is just what I think about like this is what I think about him being transphobic. I think is like what I'm getting at. It's so much internalized transphobia and so much self-loathing, and you see it in some of his other statements that he's made about like more inward focused ones. He's quoted as saying, "Being transgender is a kind of curse. All my life, I've been fighting never belonging, never being male or female, and it got to the stage where I couldn't deal with it any longer. To feel you don't belong, to feel insane, to feel perverted and disgusting, you go fucking nuts." And you do go fucking nuts, and he did go fucking nuts, kind of. And like that's I think where a lot of this comes from. And then he's quoted as saying that he had grown up believing there was something wrong with me and that I was somehow damaged and dirty. And I just think that these things have been so ingrained, and he's gotten far enough in his own journey to be like, this is who I am and this is how I show up in the world. And I think that somewhere in there is the knowledge that this is all bullshit anyway, and like none of this is real. And I think a part of him, like, and again, I'm not trying to defend him. What he has said is really unacceptable. But it's like you can see that he's once. It's like when like someone shitty goes to therapy and they walk right up to the point, but then like don't quite cross that threshold. It's like that. He's like so close to realizing that this is all made up anyway, and like actually, like, no one can be a natural woman because that just isn't a real thing that exists in the world, and he's so close to it, but he's so I think there's just this brick wall of self-loathing that stands between him and that realization, and, Nino McQuown wrote in their essay about the ending of the movie, it's about when Magenta says to Riff Raff, like, "You killed them. I thought you liked them. They liked you." And Riff Raff says, "They didn't like me. They never liked me." And the author wrote, "It is about the damage and the dirtiness that never goes away, no matter how much they say they like you. It's about queer unbelonging. It is about being a monster among monsters and not even being wanted there." And I think that it's really crucial that he gave this line to himself. Like he gave himself this role of literally being told, "You're all right by me," by Dr. Scott, and he can't internalize it. He can't be accepted. And I think particularly for trans people who are often excluded by the queer community and who are often thrown under the bus, it's like this phrase about it's about being a monster among monsters and not being wanted even there. Like it's like even in these queer spaces, something about him feels so at odds with everybody around him, and he is not able to reconcile that. And because he can't reconcile it for himself, he's like lobbing that in everyone else's face. And so again, I say all this to not say that he's not transphobic. He is blatantly transphobic in many of his quotes. And I feel really strongly that I can see what's going on there. And we have all these little nuggets that create this picture of him as someone who can't accept it because then he would have to accept himself. And something is disrupting that process internally so much. And like if he said it was okay for other people, he would have to actually admit that it's okay for him. And he can't. And so he can't. And like I feel frustrated by his inability to like take in some of the messaging of his own art but I also feel really bad for him. And that doesn't outweigh my frustration with him and my disappointment in the things that he says, but I just feel horrible for him because he has given us so much before he started saying these things, and I wish that he had gotten more out of it. And I wish that he had taken in some of what he has given to other people, because he's given a lot of people a way into their own identity and their own queerness and their own sense of belonging and community. And it seems like that's always eluded him. And I feel horrible. Like, I feel so sad for him. And I just feel like none of what he's saying is okay. And also, like, it all makes a lot of sense put into the context of who he is and what we know about him and what we know about his stories that he tells about who he is and how he understands himself. And so, like I said, I'm not trying to defend. I don't like, if you think that he's transphobic, you're right. He literally is. I do think I wish people had the tiniest bit more empathy, because he is stuck, apparently, in the cycle that Frank was stuck in, of feeling like an outsider and then lashing out and then being more cast aside and then lashing out more, and like it just goes on and on and on and on. And I don't think he's ever going to be able to say like enough is enough on that front. And yeah, I just hope that people have empathy for him. I don't think that they owe him anything, really, but I think I would challenge people to try to feel empathy towards someone who clearly has some level of understanding about all of this, but has never been able to emotionally digest it, because that's a really sad place to be.
That's a really beautiful read on it. I think that all makes so much sense. And I think what it comes down to really is, you might have already even said the phrase, but internalized transphobia, right? Like, not to bring her up again, but as opposed to someone like J.K. Rowling, who, for I don't know, all intents and purposes, is cis and straight. That's not the same thing. That's She thinks that trans people are dangerous, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think this is different with Richard O'Brien. I don't see it as the exact same thing. I think like everything you just said is makes perfect sense to me. Of just like, I mean, he's also like, how old is he at this point? Like, probably pretty fucking old. And like, not that's not any kind of excuse, but I think it just gives context of like, he didn't grow up with like TikTok and Instagram and like, connecting with queer people in 1.2 seconds every day. Like, that's a really different place to grow up in. And to be honest, it's already such a crazy feat that he came up with this musical. But it's hard to imagine like what a battle it is internally to recognize all these things about yourself, versus if you're growing up now, there's lots of battles your way. Not to say that growing up today is easy. There's so much more language at our disposal nowadays. There is so much more community, depending where you live in the world. And I think that helps a lot. Doesn't make being a queer person in 2025 easy, but it's different than when he was growing up. I do think that comes into play. And there was something he said in 2023, which I'm going to interpret as him kind of becoming more open minded. I don't really know what to make of it, but um, he said, "We all know that nobody asks to be born straight or gay. We seem to be going backwards slightly, don't we, on this whole issue? I thought we'd have got over that. I thought we all understood now that people are born gay and people are born transgender. It's not a choice. I thought we'd all agreed on that. But lately, we're becoming confused by the whole subject once again. I prefer a more tolerant society." I did not look into what the whole interview was about past this quote, so I guess I can't really contextualize it. It is kind of ambiguous in some ways. I don't know if he's trying to say like, I'm becoming more tolerant and like open-minded. I'm gonna hope that that's along the lines of it, of just like, let's do away with persecuting people. Let's do away with like being too rigid about things. So I guess in some ways that's optimistic.
Yeah, and I think that it's true either way that he prefers a more tolerant society. I don't think that any of his point is that, like, we should be dismissive of trans people. I think he is being dismissive of trans people. But it's like this weird, messy thing where I also don't think that he thinks they deserve disrespect or lack of safety or lack of healthcare. Like, I think he just thinks they deserve to have access to whatever they want and need to be happy and healthy and safe. So it's weird. It's like a weird thing, but there's no there's no clean and like neat way to tie a bow on Richard O'Brien. He's a really complicated figure. And I hope, like you said, that he's becoming more open-minded, and I hope that for what he says publicly, and I hope that for his internal world and his own, like, sanity and his own ability to connect with himself, which is, like, what queerness is about more than anything else on some levels, right? We can talk about community, we can talk about romantic relationships, but at the end of the day, queerness starts and ends with us, like ourselves, how we understand ourselves, how open we are to who we are now and who we might grow into and all of these things. And so I want that for him. And I'm not asking anyone else to do that. Like, I think if you are incredibly frustrated by the things he says, like I said, you are right. Like, you are correct to be frustrated. You are correct to think he's transphobic. But I wish peace for him.
Well, because also like when like someone is trying to heal themselves and be at peace with themselves, inevitably they'll treat everyone else better. Like no happy, content, fulfilled, healed person is mad at trans people. Like that's just not a that's my opinion. Like right, you can't be a bigot and be a perfectly uh yeah, like you can't be perfectly at peace.
Like, well adjusted person.
Yeah, well-adjusted person, like that's not possible because that's not human nature. Human nature is not bigotry. So
Right.
it's at odds. So wishing him healing and peace for himself is actually just going to make the world a better place in that way.
I totally agree. And that's also like my own kind of love letter to him to say thank you for giving me this thing that has been such a big part of my life and has given me a lot of peace. And yeah, just like wanting him to get some of that back. So, all that being said about the complex figure that is Richard O'Brien, clearly we both love this movie. Clearly it means a lot to both of us. And I want to end the episode with a quote from Absolute Pleasure by Roxy Ruedas, who says, "Anyone has what it takes to be a Rocky Horror fan. There's no right way to exist as a fan in the Rocky Horror community. Your level of involvement and participation in the culture have no bearing on being a true fan. There isn't a set number of callbacks that people need to know or a specific way you have to dress. You don't even have to know older fans if you're too shy. Your experience is what you make of it. There's a place for anyone to become a devoted member of the Rocky Horror community because there is so much that still resonates with people about this film 50 years later. And if you are one of the people it resonates with, then you belong here."
I have tears in my eyes. I mean, that's what anyone can hope from art and from being a human and connecting with other people and watching something and having that galaxy brain moment of like your eyes widening and you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, I'm sad that I can't remember that moment for myself, like the first moment of watching this. But in a interesting way, I have it every time I watch this movie. Like, even the other day, just watching it on my laptop, like taking notes. It's not the most cinematic experience, but I was dancing. I was like, just connecting with it every time I watch it. And it's so true. And I think that's again the beautiful part of the queer community, but also musicals. Okay, lest we
There's a
forget,
big that's
this
a
is
tight Venn
a fucking
diagram.
musical. Yeah.
It's not quite a circle, but it's pretty tight in there.
Like this could not have been a play. You know what I mean? This was destined to be a musical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I just want to say, like, thank you for talking to me about this for literally 3 hours. I feel like we could we could probably do this 10 more times and still not run out of things to say, but this has been such a meaningful I feel like all of our conversations have been such a delight, and I think they just keep getting they like just keep getting better. And I'm so grateful for I think your vulnerability as well, because I think that particularly for this one, I actually think when I came on and we did Russian Doll, I think that was similar more than I think Phantom of the Opera was. I just appreciate your vulnerability and willingness to have a really personal conversation about this piece of art, because it's impossible to talk about Rocky Horror without it being personal if you really like love it. And it might only be personal to the extent that it makes you really happy and whatever, but like it's a vulnerable conversation kind of in and of itself, just because of what it's about. So just like thank you for showing up for that and like going on this journey with me, and I just really appreciate
You are so kind. The absolute pleasure is mine.
it.
I feel so honored, truly so honored that you would ask me to talk about this movie with you. I didn't realize how much of a history you had when you asked if we could cover this. And I'm so happy to have discovered that and to share this with you. I mean, everything you just said is like right back at you. Like, this is, I could, like, I like when you're like, oh, for 3 hours, I'm like, oh, wait, but like, do you have another three? Because like, we
Not
could,
today, but
again,
like
it's
we could find another
yeah,
3. I still need to bring you back for like an actual horror movie. It's still on my agenda, but
yeah.
I wanted to do this for Halloween, and obviously there was no one else. There was no I mean, I could have asked a lot of people, and I think a lot of people would have been great and fine. It's not like I know plenty of people who like it, but yeah, I mean, I knew between the musical element, I just knew that it had to be
Oh
you.
my god, that means so much to me. Wow. No, that is the best compliment I could ever receive. And yeah, I think there is, just as like a last aside, I think there is something about musicals that does require a certain level of vulnerability. I know Russian Doll wasn't
Yeah,
a musical, could be,
could
but
be.
like there is a that earnestness that has to be there, even with something as over the top as Rocky Horror. Like, that always has a vulnerability underneath it. And so I don't know how to approach musicals without being a little bit sappy or without being personal about it, because that's what it requires when you watch them.
Yeah. And I think the answer to how you do that is don't.
There you go.
Thanks for listening to this episode of What Haunts You, a podcast about the stories that haunt our dreams. Find us on Instagram at What Haunts You Pod, and find all of our episodes on YouTube and Spotify. Thanks again to Caitlin for joining me for this absolute pleasure of a conversation. If you haven't checked out Caitlin's podcast, it's called Watched It, and it is a TV show podcast. They are on a break right now, but they have a really great backlog to check out. I was on there to talk about the Netflix show Russian Doll, but they have so many TV show discussions to check out. There is almost certainly something in there for you. I'll link all of that information in the show notes and on Instagram. Next episode, we will be getting back into 80s horror. But for now, I hope you all have an excellent Halloween. Watch some good movies, have yourself a good scare, and obviously plenty of treats. See you in the next one.